I'd like to call this special meeting to order on February 6th. Right? No, I don't think it's for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
make sure everyone can hear me. Is that good?
Yep.
Thumbs up? This is a reminder that the Board of Education meetings are business meetings of public where the public has the right to observe the board doing business. While the board wants the public to provide input, our budget discussions and deliberations must be based on data and clear understanding of the budget proposal and the exploration of the available options. These meetings are the only time the board members have together to debate and discuss the budget. Under discussion, each member gets to speak if they have a say by raising a hand, going around the table. No one member should be able to monopolize the discussion. As a reminder, everyone can speak once and we'll wait until all others have a chance to talk. Then a second phase shall commence. I would like to start off tonight's meeting by giving each member a few minutes for an opening statement and where their position is. Then we'll be discussing the three main topics. The three highlighted main topics are personnel, programs, and reductions. There will be one main topic discussed at a time. After the discussions on each topic, I will conduct a straw poll of the members. By the end of the meeting, the straw poll should be used for general vote to provide direction to Dr. Willett for the budget on February 12th. So I'd like to start off. Jacob, if you have where you're at with the budget, what you're feeling.
Okay. So I think that this whole process has been, especially for a new board member, a process of understanding needs versus wants. It's been very educational in that way, especially as a new member. First, I'd just like to highlight some of the things that I think that this superintendent's budget does have that I think are good, that do help our mission to educate students. I think that this budget does, in general, a good job of supporting special ed services. I think it's, in particular, I like how it funds the LEAP program and continues to provide support for that. I like how it supports the Tolland Business Academy and also the personal finance classes in the high school. Some of the textbook or curriculum workbook purchases have gone up because of that, but I think that's a good investment. And I also like how it supports Literacy How for dyslexic students and provides funding for a new transportation contract, which will help renovate some of the new buses, hopefully increase reliability. Over this process, I'd just like to say that Dr. Willett and the Board of Ed, as a whole, have been working hard to find some cost savings, and I think that has been a successful effort. And I think that there are some programs that were slated to be reduced that I'd like to add in and hope that we can do that. However, I would just like to make the point that right now our schools district is being squeezed on two fronts, if you will. We're still facing ECS cuts. We have a grand list devaluation estimate, which is going to hurt the property tax base. And on the other hand, you do have contractual increases. Several major bargaining unit agreements that were put into place last year are going to squeeze us up on that end. And I think that's very important. We need to be mindful of that. I like last meeting, Dr. Willett presented us with a suggestion for a 1.32% increase as one of the options. I would like to be somewhere around there, ideally. I think that that's probably a good balance. That's it.
Perfect, thank you. First off, I just want to thank Dr. Willett. I know that the last 2 weeks especially have been a lot of work, a lot of questions, a lot of answers. And I think we worked really hard in trying to just understand it. And as Jacob said, as a new board member, it's a lot to kind of take in and understand and try to, make a difficult decision. As far as, I guess I'll just jump to where I kind of stand, I agree with the 1.3. There are a couple things I'd like to see put back in the budget, specifically the special ed, and I would like to, at the very least, look at girls volleyball, since that's the one sport that there are no rec options and no middle school options, and so that's kind of where I am at this point.
I'm gonna have to get back to the
Okay,
doctor, if you can come back to me, please.
Absolutely. Up here in the
I just got here, so I'm not quite sure what we're doing.
Well, we're just going around, just getting everyone's feelings for where they are right now with the budget and how you just feel toward it, if there's like particular items, because what we're going to do is go through and we'll talk about the personnels, we'll talk about programs, and then we'll talk about the reductions as main topics within each, the three. That way we can actually have a straw poll and to see what exactly we want to add back in, take out, go from there.
Okay, do you
You can, I can continue and then you can come back.
go back around?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
I guess I was pleasantly surprised with, some of the options offered to us after all the work that FFC did, and Dr. Willett, so it's pretty awesome that we're having some conversations about what we can add in and, how we can also work with the town in the sense that I believe the town manager had asked for a 0% increase, which, through the learning process, a 0% is very hard without sacrificing the needs of the kids, the students at home. So I think there's a balance that we as a board can find, hopefully amongst everybody, and we can provide that direction to Dr. Willett. As far as where I'm at right now, I've heard a lot of good things about RAS kids. I feel as if the special ed teacher, just from talking to staff and talking to Dr. Willett, I feel like it might be something that we could do without this year, but would need to come back next year, and I don't know if it's worth the chaos of not having it, so that's something that I'd like to see added back. I've always wanted a curriculum director or an assistant superintendent, however, I think that with the structure that Dr. Willett has in place with all of the supervisors, that seems to be what he wants, and they're doing a good job and they're working diligently, so I think the curriculum director, maybe we can plan for it next year or start to talk about it, but at this point, I think I could sacrifice that. In terms of the sports, I've heard a lot of parents want that back, but if it's something that, I was looking at a list that Dr. Willett had provided of positions that weren't required, and there was pairs on there and that were requested but not in the budget, and there was pairs on there and there was things on there that, maybe there are needs that aren't being met that the sports could help alleviate by taking them out, so I'm still up in the air on that, if, I'm open to suggestions. In terms of cuts, I don't think that we've cut anything, in the sense of, when we reviewed all the line items, we reviewed Dr. Willett's proposed budget, but we looked at line items that truly didn't affect programming or students. We looked at course reimbursements, FICA, postage. I know we had a lot of heat for that, but the postage, if you took $5,000 off of postage, you could have the girls volleyball team and the custodian position. I think there was an extra one in the budget. But no, so I didn't really have a number in my head. I was thinking, obviously with some of what we found, I wanted it lower than the 1.8, but it's open to discussion on, what we can come to the table with here and go from there.
Well, I wanted to, again, also thank Dr. Willett and everybody, particularly Christine, who really went through a lot of the line items, at least via FFC, I'm sure other people did on their own as well. And, just helping to look at things, and, I'm pleased to see that, our potential offset is a little bit larger than it was when we last met, so that's always exciting. We've been through a lot of questions and answers, and I, for one, am pleased that we did that in public. I know there's been some feeling that maybe, I'm not sure we shouldn't have, but I think it's a new board, we wanna understand, and I think that there's a good basis for doing that. As far as where I am at, I've heard the most support, I think, from Dr. Willett and others around the special education teacher, potentially taking a look at that and seeing if maybe that is something that, you know, we did wanna keep as opposed to the original proposed budget of eliminating it. And I'm really open on some of the other items. I think that I've heard some really good things about the RAS kids, particularly for the younger folks in the elementary school, really helps there. So certainly open to hearing about that and thinking in that way. And also, I have heard and have always been a supporter on the sports. I do understand that for some kids that's their main driver to come to school. If it's possible to keep at least the volleyball, where I feel like the basketball and the baseball, maybe there are other outlets, but I'm not necessarily closed off to those either, but so I do see that. I'm glad that we added the literacy how to begin this year. I'm not certain, I think it's good to consider it for both special education teachers and for regular ed, but I'm not sure that we really, I'm just not sure if we need to really add that for this year. So that's, again, in my mind, something that I'm open to talking about.
I fear that in an attempt to be proactive toward a fiscally conservative new board, Dr. Willett has not put forth a spending plan that lays a path forward. What he's given us is a bare bones, austere spending plan. He did not start with a plan that provides for level services, anticipating the desires of this current board. The current 2020-2021 budget plan is not one that promotes progression. Our town and our students deserve better than this. The education system in Tolland is one of our greatest assets, and if the Board of Education does not support education, then we are not abiding by our oaths of office. And we are not abiding by CGS Canon 222, which states each local or regional Board of Education shall maintain good public elementary and secondary schools. We are not doing our duty. The cumulative effect of multiple years of minimal increases have begun to demonstrate their toll in our schools. There are fewer services, larger class sizes, fewer programs, and more family financial obligations. If we continue on this path, we are going to open ourselves up to financial liability. The increases from the past few years have not kept pace with inflation despite static contractual expectations. Is this plan, this 2020-2021 plan, providing the same level of services of the budget plans from previous years? 24% of the people that live in Tolland are aged 0 to 18 for the last survey from 2018. Almost a fourth of the entire population is dependent upon us to ensure readiness for college and career. And the residents of our town have an absolute right to expect that of us and our town. Despite the challenges that the town has faced, Dr. Willett has created and implemented a plan to keep our students with special needs right here at home, which has netted both a financial and human benefit. He has also proactively advocated with legislators for elementary school efforts which netted an 89% reimbursement from the state in addition to millions that the state fronted for the modular classrooms. While running a district single-handedly, Dr. Willett has been working with the BGP Building Committee to build a community treasure that will outlast us by generations. Just as we invest in our retirements in order to ensure our personal future, we must invest in our schools to ensure our community's future. With anything less than a level services budget, with corrections for inflation, we are kidding ourselves about setting up our community for success. It is not about the numbers, it's about the services. I would like to take this time to address specifically the concerns that the public have brought to us. Over 102 people signed a letter that I would like to read into the minutes. This is the letter signed by 102 residents. voters. We request that our Board of Education, the board, focus on the quality of a Tolland education. Make adjustments wherever possible to reinvest in ways that will provide for our current students. When we compare the opportunities that were provided to our students prior to the emergency reductions of the summer of 2017, we recognize that there is more recovery needed. Some areas aren't currently sustainable, and the slide in the quality of education will continue to decrease by suggested reductions this year. A budget is a plan, far more than a laundry list of numbers. The board is scrutinizing purchase, service, and supply accounts while the needs of our students have been deliberated far less. Variances were caused by the disruption of cuts, not by overspending or from wrongdoing. To understand the context, especially for a new board, one has to examine the complete picture, not just the current line-by-line approach. Line item review must comprise perhaps 10 or 20% of the budgeting activities at most, not the current 100%. If need be, with the very limited time remaining, budget every non-staffing, non-special education budget line to trend and be done with it. Allocate the remaining time to asking, and this is bolded, to what degree are we providing for our students? We ask that the board consider investing in Tolland schools by prioritizing the following into the school budget. Bulleted list. Curriculum director, or better yet, an assistant superintendent of learning and instruction. Special education case manager remain in place. Art remains intact at the high school. Freshman sports remain in place. Do not cut programs, RAS, Newsella, and the general ed implementation of Literacy How. The system has not recovered from the disruption just prior to the start of school in 2017. 16.5 general education positions were cut in 2017, see graph below. 6.7 special ed or student support additions enabled future savings in out-of-district special education. That plan is working and now paying back. However, general education has endured even further teacher reductions in more recent budgets, especially impacting the middle school. At the same time, the money saved from general education losses has been put into the town's reserve bank account. That account increased over 20% by well over $1 million during the same time frame, funded by these cuts. Residents don't understand this because they've been told that through mailers that this town's reserve bank account is decreasing. This discrepancy has been ignored in public meetings. Our general education now needs to recover. Concern over our students and the quality of education they receive should be the most important issue the board discusses. After the budget has been adopted, please consider discussing how to improve the quality of education in Tolland by looking at programs and staff that have been lost. Consider the lack of technology at Birch Grove and how that impacts the class time spent on NEWA testing, which is progress monitoring. Consider class sizes. Consider the impact of not having a social worker at every school, especially in light of the mental health crisis. Consider increasing world languages, including at younger grades, to prepare our students for a global economy. Consider supporting one-to-one technology beyond the middle school to prepare our 21st century learners. These are what we can do to reinvest in our students. We must do better for our children and our town to remain a place where families want to live. We, the undersigned, request that the Board of Education use the remaining time in the budget process to ask, how can we improve the quality of education for all of our Tolland students? Again, 102 people signed that letter, and I agree with what they're asking.
Anything else?
All right. So let me start by offering my sincere appreciation to a few parties for their assistance during this budget process so far. To every person that took the time to voice their thoughts and opinions, I thank you. Your messages helped me identify facets that I needed to understand better to really be able to look at this budget. Dr. Willett, thank you for being beyond willing to work through the myriad of questions and provide the short and the long answers. Without much of that information, for me it would be impossible to make an educated decision on this proposal. I appreciate that. It's been pointed out that our mandate is to identify and fight for the needs of our district. I completely agree. And we ask ourselves, how does this advance the academic success of our children? what aspects of a budget are best for the development of our district and through it, our children. We have walked through the aspects of the superintendent's proposed budget. We walked through the reductions in staff and in services. Dr. Willett and his staff have been amazingly open in their discussions on how they would adjust and what the effects would be. We have discussed the savings identified by the insurance and what could happen with those savings. My research has suggested that the best thing for our children is not as easy as simply adding back the items that have been removed. Dr. Willett's explanations as recently as this document he put out an hour ago show that these reductions were chosen very carefully. The effects may have temporary pains, but ultimately place us in a position to take the critical next steps. While this budget is focused on a single fiscal year, the vision is not. It is for these reasons that I believe the conversation has to start with using those savings to reduce the budget request in the superintendent's proposed budget down to the 1.17 that Dr. Willett has an option for. Thank you.
Second. Back to me. Thank you. I'm sorry, parental duty called earlier, so I apologize for that. First of all, I know that, again, I want to reiterate and mimic, repeat what people have been saying. Dr. Willett, you and your staff have been very forthcoming and very flexible and very willing to, no matter how minuscule or large our requests were, you were very accommodating at getting those and doing your best to educate us throughout this process. So it's very appreciated. I appreciate, the folks that several of us have been in conversations, whether it's been in our committee meetings and the budget meetings, in different times and having good quality conversations. So I'm very appreciative of that. In light of the insurance information that you provided us last time, that obviously was a wonderful meeting that you had scheduled with the consultant, so that's fantastic news for our town. But what I would really like to talk about is how we can consider to positively impact the overall education of our children by reinstating positions and programs and instituting new programs that will continue to drive a strong education system through Tolland Public School. I don't necessarily have a number, like Christina said. I know what I'd like to see. Obviously, I want us to be fiscally responsible, but I also need to remember that we can't have those blinders and just looking at this year in 2021. We have to look at what the ramifications or the results, the positive results will be for us a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, because the decisions that we make today will ultimately impact that. With that being said, there has been some steps. Kate, thank you very much for reading that letter. And thank you for all the folks that did write in letters and emails and phone calls and different things, because that also helped educate. I think our historical knowledge is paramount for us to really understand. We can't just look at a draft and say, cut here, add here, cut here, add here, right? Having all that historical knowledge has been very, very helpful. I would be in favor of adding assistant superintendent or director of curriculum. However, that lines up with what our professional staff needs. I definitely think that is important. The special ed case manager, art in high school, the Lexile programs, the RAS programs, and then very specifically the general ed implementation of Literacy How. We currently have this SPED population has the Literacy How, and that's fantastic, and our results have shown it. I know that several people have asked, to see how the program is sustained and see some more results, but I think our 35 to 13 students that have gone through that program because of the staff that we've had have validated some of the results we've had through the special education program. So I definitely think that our general population implementing a program such as that, or expanding our program such as that, will help us before we get to that SPED. As we can probably talk with some educators in the room, as well as some of us on the board, will know that dyslexia, different situations like that is not necessarily special education. It is our job to get from the ground floor and do our best to impact it head on right away. And I think enrolling the general ed implementation of literacy how is paramount. But again, I'm gonna read my statement that we need to consider how we can positively impact the overall education of our children. How are we educating our children of town? It's my job as a board member, and I take it very seriously that I'm ensuring that we have quality education for every person's child in this town. Every person's, whether they have a child, if it's their neighbor's children, or their neighbor's neighbors, or their grandchildren, or what have you, or it's just to improve the largest asset that we have in our town. And that is in fact our school system. And there's no argument against the fact that it is our largest asset. And we need to continue to reinvest in our asset. Give us our oil changes, if you will, right? We're not gonna drive our car for 150,000 miles without doing those oil changes and those tune-ups. So I definitely think we need to kind of take a step back and so we can take a look at this historical knowledge, see what we need to implement going forward, and reinvest in our children, and reinvest in the programs and the tools that are needed to invest in our children. And again, thank you everybody for writing in. You've helped educate me through the process. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I didn't mean to be last, but
I apologize.
no, that's okay. So it was my hope tonight that we would have a big picture conversation and kind of a strategic plan for the future kind of conversation about Tolland schools, and talk about the gains that we've made, and how that will continue to move us forward as a district. These investments that have been made are working, and I think it's really important to focus on some of that. I also wanted to talk about, some of those investments which are LEAP, the Business Academy, other pathways that we have talked about in the past and Dr. Willett has talked about in the past for engineering, art, technology, math, a true STEAM concept for our district, and what that looks like as part of our vision for the future of education in Tolland. I didn't want to focus on just specific numbers tonight because I feel it's important, again, like Dana said, to talk about some historical information that we've been through the past few years. Going object by object, I totally get it. Finding savings is a thing. But that's one thing, and I'm not denying that it's a good thing. But I want to talk about how we invest that savings in our education goals for all of our students. I would like this board to acknowledge that in 2017, we were being threatened with a $3 million budget reduction. In response to that, and in an effort to be fiscally responsible, Dr. Willett and the board had to make substantial cuts that we are still trying to recover from today. I lived that. There are people in this room that lived that. It did damage. We are still trying to recover from that damage. You may not see it because the door is still open in September. The kids come to school, parents are fine, it's all great. But it's there. An education system is directly linked to our property values. There's plenty of real estate data out there to attest to that. I've even spoken to a local real estate agent that verified that fact. I think we have to be cognizant of how our school district has a long-lasting effect on our community. And that's not, our job is to think about our students, but yes, we can be cognizant of the whole community about the asset we have here with our schools. I have some information about freshman sports that I think is relevant.
Do you want to save that when we actually hit the freshman sports?
No, I'd
section?
actually like to just say
Okay.
that.
This year alone, the total students affected is 48. Out of 183 freshman class, that's 26%. 26% of that class. And I think that's a very relevant number.
Can we just clarify, so you're saying that 48 of the 183 are participating in freshman sports? And they're not participating also in JV, or do you not know that?
You know what, though, let's
Very
let her
minimal.
finish what she's gonna say, and then we can.
Minimal
go back
sit on JV.
I just,
But those are,
okay.
yes, not a lot. Actually, for girls volleyball, 0 sit on JV. Baseball hasn't happened yet, so that's a spring sport. So that's not an exact number, but that's based on a typical roster. There's travel teams out there, parents will pay money for. I think this is about taking away opportunity for kids. Yes, this is the thing that connects them to school, connects them with another adult, and sometimes this activity is the one thing that does keep them wanting to come to school. I think we can also tie back this to efforts with school culture and climate. Many freshmen don't want to play rec basketball. They want to play for their school. And the developmental difference between a freshman and an older child in the high school is very different. And that's part of the reason why they don't want to play rec. It's very easy to say, oh, there's rec programs out there for them. But it's a very different concept when you talk about a freshman and a senior or a junior. There is nothing in rec for volleyball, as I think somebody already said. Baseball, yes, there's, I think, the juniors division with Little League for baseball, but typically kids want to play for their school. And if we're taking away that opportunity, I think that that's sad. I also wanted to talk a minute about art. I went to the art show this evening at the high school. I highly recommend you stop in and see it. It's gonna be up, it's outside the library on the second floor for the next couple weeks. These are AP and seminar art students. Fantastic work. I talked to all of them. Several of them are going on to art school. Some of them are minoring in art, some of them haven't gotten answers yet, so I think that we need to gather some perspective about our students and what they're doing in our school. When we talk about the future and things like STEAM, that is something that we could really be investing in as an art pathway. And when you limit their opportunities, it's not gonna be good, it's sad. I can also speak from experience. My senior did not play school sports, did not participate in any clubs at school, but she loved art, and she took full advantage of that and did very well. And her teacher encouraged her, and she loved it. I can honestly say, if it wasn't for the art program, I don't know that she would be at Tolland High School. I don't know, but I pushed her into the art because she liked it. And I said, give it a try. The teachers encouraged her. She did well. It's not just about being talented with art. You're using another side of your brain. It's another form of learning. It's a place that they can go that's not math or science or English. It's very different, and they can be creative. So I just wanted to talk a minute about the advantages of art in our schools. And when we talk about things like teaching the whole child and teaching holistically, that is part of it. Art is part of it. So I really did not wanna talk about a specific number tonight. I really wanted to talk about the whole child, and every child has something in this piece of paper that will affect them. So I'm not sure where that conversation goes here with all of us, but that's the message that I wanted to bring to the table tonight.
Thank you.
I would like to add where I'm at the moment. I had a meeting with Dr. Willett this morning. So I kind of asked a lot of questions to him, and he pretty much knows where I'm standing. I asked my kids, because I have 2 of them in the schools, 1 in 3rd and 1 in 8th. So from my experience, the Raz Kids program is something that I love, but I love it for Birch Grove. Not necessarily TIS, they don't really seem to use it much, but the Birch Grove kids, I think it's really a great tool for them. So that would definitely be something that I would like to say. The Nuswella, is that how you pronounce it, Nuswella? I asked my son about it because it's in the middle school and the high school. And he asked me, he said, well, can we replace it? Can we take out Niwa instead? Because he actually liked the articles that they have and the questions. So it was something that we just kind of went back and forth about. In terms of the freshman sports, I would have to agree. There are definitely those students who athletics are exactly what they want to do. I do understand definitely for girls volleyball, there are no rec programs. So that would be on the top of my sports list. In terms of the special education, I would like to see the special education teacher be added into. I was subbed at the schools a lot, and I just know that from the position that I thought it was, when I talked to Dr. Willett today, he did mention that it could be anyone from a K through 12 slot, and it's not necessarily that high school slot, and I really don't want to see any support being taken away from that. That's essentially where my head is at. And now I would like to talk about all the personnels. So we can go through, he has 3 positions, so we can do the 5th grade teacher and discuss that for a little bit, and then after we go around, we will talk about the unified arts teacher and then followed up by the special education teacher. So Jacob, if you want to start us off with the 5th grade teacher.
Okay, so with the 5th grade teacher, I'm not really in favor of adding that back in. The reason why is because the declining enrollment, it just makes sense that we would be able to reduce the position in those younger grades, and that's why I'm not in favor of bringing that back.
I won't repeat exactly what Jacob said, but that's exactly kind of feel the same way about the 5th grade position. With the class sizes going down in the schools, I'd rather see different positions added back.
I'm in favor of returning the 5th grade position. I'm in favor of returning the 5th grade position. Simply because of the dynamic of the 5th grade classroom, the way they do in tandem. And I think it's paramount that we think about every student and how they learn and develop. And some folks need that structure and knowing that they're having that specific partnership with that other teacher and such. So from my understanding and talking to the administrators throughout this process is that will disruptive and it won't be as consistent as it has been when it's in those tandems. So I'd be in favor of returning the 5th grade teacher.
Keep it.
Just based on the enrollment data that Dr. Willett provided to us, I wouldn't be in favor of adding the 5th grade teacher.
I would agree with that.
I just have a question before I answer this. Are we just gonna go through just the things that Dr. Willett suggested to cut from the budget? Or are we gonna actually entertain the request of the 102 people that wrote to us?
Well, we're gonna go through, I had discussed this with him because he needs a clear vision as to what he has proposed. So we're gonna go through this and
I'm in favor of keeping the teacher, more More instability is not good for our kids, it's not good for our teachers, it's not good for our district, not to mention the fact that the year after this, you're gonna have to add another teacher back to grade 5, so I say keep the teacher.
I am not in favor of putting it back. You know, it's the discussions that I've had with Dr. Wood, and we're looking at the year by year ebbs and flows and surges of the student population in different grades. And he talks about the adjustments that he has to moving a teacher from one grade to the other to take into, you know, to take into account those type of things. And I feel that when he brought the 5th grade teacher onto the table for the budget discussion, that he took all that into account. So I do not believe that it makes sense to put it.
I have actually a question about the 5th grade teacher for Dr. Willett. You know, as we talk about things pertaining to trend, I know we do sometimes get an influx of children over the summer. So my fear is we cut the 5th grade teacher and then next year we get some kids in and we're already at risk of being in a high class size, then we have to hire a teacher again. When summer comes. So at the risk of doing that, that's one of the big reasons why I don't wanna cut 5th grade teacher. So if we're already gonna be close to a tipping point and then we get an influx of kids, we're in a very dangerous circle of fire and hire. And I think that it causes a lot of morale issues and loyalty issues with our staff, and that's not something I'm willing to do. So if you have an idea what the past years we've seen with either after the budget or over the summer of students that come into the district.
Yeah.
You may not know that obviously off the top of your head, but I know that it does happen.
I would estimate that it can fluctuate from 4 to 8 up or down in that zone as the year begins. I'm thinking district-wide.
Because I mean that's spring, summer is when you're gonna see an influx of kids registering in the district.
I'd like to add, I asked him today during our discussion, and I felt that he was confident that moves could be made so that our classroom sizes would still be where they should be.
The 5th grade position is in here. The positions that are in here for reduction are the ones that I chose to try to have the least negative impact. So we would keep class sizes roughly the same.
Dr. Willett, can you jump into it now?
The class sizes would be roughly the same in the situation that we're in with grade 5 without any massive fluctuation, which is why I chose the grade 5 position. But I know a number of people are unhappy with that, and I respect it. Again, you know, when you're making reductions, you're just making the best choice that you can based on the circumstances. And I made the choices that I did because I felt that it made the least negative impact.
Dr. Willett, I apologize if you answered this on the Q&A and I missed it, but I had asked you if you thought that there would be a retirement or some way so that when the classroom teachers were kind of shifted, would that 5th grade teacher actually be losing their job, or is there a place for them somewhere between K and 5?
One 5th grade teacher would lose their job.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. One 5th grade teacher would lose their 5th grade job.
That wasn't my question.
Just to answer that more comprehensively, teachers have certifications for K6, usually at that level. So what actually would happen there is there would be, the positions would be 6 positions in 5th grade. The person could come from any of those certification areas. You'd have to go through.
Sorry. I guess the words that, the narrative that concerns me is the least negative impact. So would lead me to believe that there is a negative impact. And we talk a lot about the different programs and the different tools that are available to our students to help with their education. But wouldn't one of the most valuable assets be our staff and our faculty there with them? So that's just would be my concern, and I know Dr. Willett's job is to present a budget and to present a budget that is going to be proposed as a strong school system. And as Karen said, we're gonna open in the fall. Those doors are gonna open no matter what the budget. It's opened without a budget in the past. But I'd be remiss to say that several of these cuts, specifically with staff, is a negative on this budget. So I know he says least, but it's still a negative on the budget and the children of town. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was more, sorry, I don't know if that was more of a question or statement. My apologies.
I just have a quick statement. When you go to the instructional rounds, I'd like you to look in the classrooms that have 24 bodies in there. It's tight. It's tight. And that means that something's probably getting lost along the way. Our teachers are amazing, but it's tight. So just, I would ask that the board consider that when you do instructional rounds.
Casey, just wanted to address, you had brought up the letter that was written to us, and I don't think anyone up here, doesn't have the kids in mind when we think about what we're doing at this table and we question things. Just me personally, I can't speak for everybody else, but I'm just trying to find a balance. There's people that say Tolland can afford it and you should invest more and more. And then there's other people, I'm thinking of one mom that I talked to that has 4 kids in the system. And she said, if you take more from me, I can't afford to live here anymore. So there's the balance that I'm trying to find when I look at everything that Dr. Willett presented to us. Because do her 4 kids have to go somewhere else because she can't afford to live here? It would be a shame. If we can find some balance in the budget and do our due diligence and take the recommendations of Dr. Willett, I'm happy to bring that forward to the council.
Well, I would say that to respond to that, if we're worried about pricing people out, we're also potentially pricing people out of opportunities. Our education system is our opportunity maker for our kids. The more and more we chip away at the funding for schools, the more the families actually have to pay. Pay to play I didn't even know existed until I came to Tolland. It's just a thing. So there's both sides, and so there's just both sides, that's all I'll say.
I would just like to agree, there are both sides, and I agree, it's a fine line to walk between really wanting an excellent school system, supporting the kids, but not pricing people out, not having it so that people can't move in because maybe the taxes are too high or whatever that might look like. It's a difficult thing to accomplish, and a lot of people have said in some of the letters, you've gotta rely on your superintendent, for guidance, and I feel like I can say for myself, I'm trying to do that. I'm looking at the budget that he gave us and know that he went through it and did what he needed to do. He was working off of a directive from, I think, the town manager, but I'm not 100% sure. I feel sometimes a little like somehow the board is responsible for what was presented, but I don't think I can say for myself I had no input whatsoever to the presented budget. It is what we were given to work from. So, I myself would like to just do the best that we can to support the kids in something that is gonna be acceptable and not come back here in a few weeks from the town council when they say cut all this stuff out. So I'm trying to get a balance there.
Was there a directive from the town manager?
The town manager sent out the November 11th communication that asked all departments to go to
We're technically not one of their departments.
Right.
We
Yeah, I
are
mean, the
our own
clarification is that
entity.
under 10.222, you are a different entity, but the town manager's message went out and we posted it to the board's dashboard.
Tony?
You know, I just wanna draw attention again, and it relates specifically to the fifth grade teacher like we're talking about here. That nowhere in this process have we gone to Dr. Willett and said, hey, we need to find places for you to cut this by. What we've asked is going line by line at times, or going into the history, and is to find those efficiencies. Looking at this budget as one part of a multi-year whole. How do we get to where we need to be, and how do we take advantage of these places where we can reduce how much we're asking for here and put ourselves in better positions for the next year, the year after that. My fear and my concern as we go through these conversations is that as we look to try to add everything, and I'm being somewhat facetious there, but add everything back into it, we're simply kicking that can down the road where next year we've got to have this very same conversation.
With all due respect, we've been kicking the can for years.
It's not good.
No, it's not, so it's time that we invest back in our system.
Let's do the unified arts teacher, Jacob.
So this is one that I've thought quite a bit about. I think ultimately I'm not in favor of putting it back in. The reason why is just because with the questions that Dr. Willett answered for us, he gave us the enrollment numbers for those classes, and I think that they're not that high. I think that, like you said, he's trying to make reductions that have the least impact, and I think that this is one of those reductions. I think that, as Christina said, if you've got to make that choice of finding that balance between someone who's having a lot of trouble affording to stay in town and also making sure that you have a good school system that can prepare people for the future, I think that this is one of those positions that I think that you could remove to help those people to stay in town. So.
Thank you, Jacob.
I think it's important to note that by the possible loss of the unified arts teacher, we are still going to be able to offer many of the electives under the art and technology umbrella. And speaking with the admins at the high school, graphic arts is not being cut. It is still going to be available to students. And they've shifted some things, like for example, I believe the intro to keyboarding class is being shifted back to the business department. So that class is not being lost. Now, my understanding is that the impact will be, we might not have the computer aided design third level class or the graphic design third level class, but the kids will have an opportunity to still test out all of these electives that we currently have offered. Class sizes might be a little bit bigger. I know some of them have maximums, but my understanding also is AP Art is not going away, that we will still have an art teacher who can teach AP Art. So I understand that is cutting it ideal? No, but there's still several opportunities for kids to try out a lot of different types of classes, including engineering and computer science and the graphics class. So I just think that that's important to note. So while not ideal, I'm okay with if we can't have that in the budget for next year. Thank you.
I'm in favor of ensuring that we have that unified arts teacher. And the reason being is we have to make sure that those classes are available to teach the whole student, the students that have the availability and flexibility for other students that, as Karen said, teaching the whole child, right? Some folks get their wheels, get excited about school for art. Some get excited about school for sports. Some get excited about school for mathematics. Some get excited about history. From what I understand, the way that this would go is, yes, there are the classes but there will be less in the, less classes available throughout the day, as well as having the appropriate teacher with that appropriate degree to teach and implement the different levels up. And there are some children that are going to be going to school for art, majoring or minoring. So being able to be that education system that can provide them with that solid foundation so they have opportunities to go on whichever way their direction is, because not every student's gonna go this way. We have to make sure that we can help our students that are gonna go left, are gonna go right, and gonna go straight. And having the availability and the classroom availability and the classes in that they can put through their time schedule through the day is paramount.
What I heard tonight at open house was that there would probably be about 6 classes lost. Photography could be one of them. I would like to see us investing in the STEAM concept because that is what is going to keep us competitive here in Tolland. Art is one of them, and it's very important. Not that anything else isn't important, but when you start chipping away at that, it's gonna show. So I'm not in favor of cutting that position.
So I was on the fence about this one, just because I needed a little bit more education on it, but Walt gave some good answers. Christine's comment just now got me thinking, and Karen's comment got me thinking, because Christine's comment made me believe that we were looking at the whole student with what we were gonna have in place. I'd like to ask Dr. Willett if there's any truth to what Karen just said, and that we would be losing 6 classes such as photography, or is that just rumors out in the public?
The sections that the individual would teach would be 3 and 3 each semester, so you lose 6 sections of something. Because a human being would take the 6 sections. Instead of 1 it would be 3, as 2 would be 3. So so you would lose 6 sections of classes, of offerings.
Okay. And do we have any idea of what sections? Because I guess I was just under the impression that
It depends
Like
who they can
graphics.
hire, it depends who they can hire with what capabilities they have as in art. I mean, not every art teacher teaches all the same things.
But you are hiring someone because we're having 2 retirements, right, Dr. Willett?
Yeah, you'd be replacing that one art teacher, but the one teacher you wouldn't replace, that's where you'd lose the 6 sections. So if that, so there would be a sliding of teachers out of what they're doing now to cover the lower end graphics classes, that's true. One of the okay, sorry. So one of the, sorry, I'm losing my voice. One of the classes that would probably be lost in that switch up is that Penny would probably not teach a computer programming class. So there are things that whenever there is something that's lost, there's impacts. So the 6 sections would occur, and those 6 sections would be some combination of art and graphics, because you'd have to go through the hiring, see what their expertises were, and then see which positions which things you could maintain and which things you would lose based on what these individuals' strengths and weaknesses were. And my guess is it would be a combination of art and tech. And the tech part would probably be, as Ms. Penny moved over to cover the graphics, she probably would not teach a section of something she's teaching now, like computer programming.
Right, I guess as of right now, I would say I'm not for adding it back in, but if there were more efficiencies found, that would be so.
I'm not sure, but, open to talking about it some more. I do understand that, as the student population shrinks, it's gonna be harder and harder to support all of the different offerings that we may have. And once we stabilize, I think we'll get to a good place, but there is likely to be some, like, we can't offer 1, 2, and 3, as Christine said, maybe only after 1 and 2. I think that unfortunately, there may be some of that ahead, but hopefully we can mitigate it as best we can.
It's my understanding that our program is so advanced that there are actually colleges that come to talk to the art teacher looking for students to pursue art as a career. So that's something to consider. I don't know that I feel comfortable characterizing art as like something that kids test out or just try on, because it can be a professional vocation. I also am nervous about cutting an art position simply because of the social and emotional aspect that, I mean, art it can be therapy, it can be soothing, and we have pointed again and again and again to mental health as an issue, and art could be an answer to that. So I am not behind cutting the art position. I also just want to make one more point about this. And the magnet schools will happily take your money if you want to send them there to take art courses. So that's just something to think about. Like the more art classes we have, the more competitive we are as a district. And we've done an amazing job over the past 5 years of keeping our kids in district. And we're going to continue to do that if we continue to offer a good option for our kids of all different types of interests and backgrounds.
I would not be in favor of adding that. I think that, Dr. Willett made a fabulous point there in that depending on their hiring of the one position, the class recipe will shift if it's going to, depending on the strengths and weaknesses. I think that same thing applies if we do it with 2 positions, if we end up hiring the one, then we do it back out. So I think those adjustments are going to have to happen, and that the payoff on the risk is not enough to put it back in. We're remaining with the one, as Dr. Willett has recommended.
I mean, this one was definitely a tough one for me to figure out what exactly, I'm still unsure as to where I land on it. You know, I definitely wanna make sure that we have the base of the courses 1 and 2, and yeah, you know, if we could provide a 3, would that be great, but then if I'm hearing that we're gonna lose like photography and not be able to offer a base of that, then that would be a shift for me in terms of how I would feel. You know, I was definitely one of those art students in the art wing, and you know, I never took a stained glass class, but you know what, I was making stained glasses, so I feel that it, like you said, it is an outlet, but at the same token, if we have the basis of, you know, 1 and 2, and not necessarily that we offer 3 or 4, then, you know, our needs met in a way? Yeah, I do, I think that they are, but you know, it just makes me more nervous when I hear it's like a photography class that would be on the chopping block of not having that. So, you know, I thought it was just like a graphics kind of a, you know, a 3rd level that, you know, the classes were shipped already, they were still offering a selection. So
It goes back to the expertise of the people that you're hiring.
so we may not even have photography.
So the gentleman there's a gentleman there now, Mr. Blaze, whose expertise is the old school photography. And that's why you have that advanced, like, old school photography course, and that's the idea when they retire and you hire back. You may not get some because of that. And that's why I use that.
But that's
might,
Hold on.
It's just that you gotta,
I would say, have you kind of tested the water since we've known that Mr. Blaze is retiring? How confident would you be that you can find another art teacher similar to Mr. Blaze's background that could pick up the photography class?
well, I'm not an art person per se, so, but if I had to guess, I would say that the digital photography people are more predominant today than the old school chemical photography people. So the chances of replacing that old school chemical photography stuff is probably pretty low. Versus the graphic photography today would probably be fairly high. it's just that whenever there's always gonna be some cost or some compromise to whatever is eliminated, no matter what department it is. So, the hiring 1 versus 2, just gives fewer options for what we can bring back, because it's fewer people, fewer expertise areas. But again, you probably wouldn't want to lose a math person, because that would lose other sections. So it's always something.
Just a side note on the photography, the old school photography, that's what I took, and I agree with Kate that could be very therapeutic for people. So I'm not back on board with adding that position in per se, but in terms of who you hire, I would definitely love a little, old school photography background.
I saw advertised on the web. Okay. Special education teacher.
So this is a position that I would be interested in adding back in. But I understand in conversations that self and other board members have had with staff during the budget workshops, that this is a position that very tangible benefits. I know that if you don't have adequate support for special education, that not only affects special education students, but also the general population. And as has been brought up, we will probably need it next year anyway. So I would be comfortable adding that position back in.
I think that Dr. Willett and certainly the previous board has spent a lot of time kind of really working with our special ed program and the LEAP program. So this is something that if taking this out would compromise that work, then I would not want to see that happen. I think we do not want to take a step backwards when it comes to our special ed program. So I also would be in favor of adding it back. I'd rather keep it in and make sure that that program is working as we are expecting it to.
I'm in favor of keeping the special education teacher at mental health. I think, the SPED program and the LEAP program are very important and thriving programs that Dr. Willett has been behind and spearheading with the district and the staff, and I think it would be a detriment to the program if we let the special education teacher be part of the reduction.
I'd like to keep that one.
Same.
Same. 100% keep. Tony?
I've got to go back to the line that, Dr. Willett put in the superintendent's budget, where he says that this budget maintains crucial programs that provide excellent educational supports to children in general and to the special education. While I understand and completely agree that our responsibility to all the children, but particularly the ones that need additional help, is high and should remain our focus, I find it difficult to believe that when this proposed budget was put on the table or when it was being formulated, that very thought wasn't going through Dr. Willett and his staff. I think that was taken into account. When we did the roundtable discussions, my questions to the administrators were along this line. When I was asking, with the elimination of this position, how do you adjust? How does it affect? And while each one of them did mention effects that they would see, every one of them was confident that they would adjust, that the children would still be taken care of, that we would not slide in our efforts. And so I am not for putting it back. I think we've thought that through.
Can I respond?
I just wanted to say a couple things. Well, it's my turn. I'm doing the first round of everyone talking.
No,
Oh, I thought you said some.
No.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say, in terms of the special education teacher, when I first thought it was a high school position, then I kind of was a little bit more taken back by it, only because I know we started the ABA program last year in 6th grade, and now those are like 7th graders, which would eventually be, take a year and then get into high school, so if we had to wait a year, but we would have to eventually get that special ed teacher back, on our conversation today, when I had with you. You kind of brought it back around saying that it could be any position from K through 12, right? So that really does make me nervous because we need to make sure that we have our staff there for the kids. That's just my experience personally, and I definitely do not wanna see that cut. Anyone else?
Yeah, I wasn't trying to cut you. When I spoke to Patty, I believe her last name is, I always think it's something else. And I'm sorry, Patty. She said that losing a special ed case manager / teacher would be extremely problematic for maintaining services for our neediest friends. So I'm gonna go based on what she thinks. I'm gonna believe her. And that's just how I feel.
Anyone else?
Sorry.
I guess Dr. Willett, if you could clarify for me, because some of the concerns that I have in understanding the position, if we did lose this position, it could mean that there would not be a special education or caseworker in a respective building at a given time, is that correct? Meaning, like you might share TIS with Birch Grove.
We would evaluate the caseloads across the whole
Yes.
district and then redistribute caseloads. It's possible that, and until we did that, we wouldn't know for sure. But it could be that, a person would have multiple high school caseloads, it could also be a variety of different things.
And I guess where I'm going with this is, God forbid that person with the caseload is at a different school and that person, that child or that student that is on their caseload is at another premises, at another building. And if anybody's, when you're working with children who need that extra, and sometimes they need that extra right then and there, right? And these folks are educated and have the experience on how to properly take care of that respective student and child. So it would be very concerning that we'd be spreading them too thin. Just the logistics of our school district itself doesn't make it realistic and feasible, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, if I could have a position back, I would suggest a special educator came back. Mainly for me, it's about maintenance of effort. Again, you're looking at, when you're looking at, and needing to make reductions, you have to take the best information and try to do that. And I respect Patty Hess is an amazing person and I respect her opinion. Definitely, no one in any given department would say, please take this position, no matter what they can do. If it was the math liaison at the high school, they would say, please take my math person. So, it's completely understandable. And if I could return one position, if it were up to me, that would be the one I would choose. Not that the other ones are unimportant, they're all very good at it.
We could talk, go ahead.
I'd just like to redirect a question there, Dr. Willett. Understanding what you just said, when you were putting this together initially, you felt that was still a position that would minimize the negative impact. Why? What was your thought process when you put that there as opposed to any other position?
Well, I think that of the other ones that could be considered, such as math, I think there was a concern about having as many sections as we could have in math. When we're talking about intervention, we're working very hard over the last few years to make sure that we're building our intervention. And I think we've had a cascading series of issues because we haven't had our intervention consistently in place. I wouldn't want the loss to be there. We need the curriculum supervisors. I can't really be without any of them. I'm working very hard for this district. I can't be without those key people. His principals need their APs, they all have, one, and they could not function really and do the jobs they need to do without them. Caseloads can be shared, people wouldn't like that, and it would definitely be something that some people would be very stressed by and not appreciate what I did. But there's virtually no decision I can make in this district with respect to a reduction of a person or position and have some action or group not feel that this was a major transgression. And I understand. So, in terms of looking at it, it's just, who to what and to who could I split responsibilities. Having said that, I definitely, if the board felt that it could return a position and it chose to return the special ed back into the budget, which 8 out of the 9 I feel like we would do, I would not argue against it for sure. So,
Anything else? Okay. Let's go to Director of Curriculum.
So perhaps this is just as a new board member, I don't understand completely how a whole curriculum infrastructure, for lack of a better term, works up in the school, but I would like to wait at least a year before we consider this. I would like to get a better understanding of how we use a curriculum supervisors. I think a curriculum committee that we're trying to form will be helpful as well. And perhaps next year, we could make suggestions and figure out whether or how exactly the curriculum direction would fit into the picture. But at this time, I am not in favor of putting it in this budget.
As far as the curriculum director, I do think we need one. However, I do think that we need to review the roles and responsibilities of the 3 supervisors. I would rather see kind of a reallocation of positions with that than adding a whole nother admin position. When we're talking about cutting teachers, I have a really hard time adding an admin position. But I do think that there's room to review the existing supervisors and how we can use their expertise to kind of best serve the district. My understanding is we had a curriculum director a few years ago. I'm not sure why that was removed. I believe she was moved to an assistant principal position. I don't know what
She retired.
but before she retired, she was a curriculum supervisor.
Yep.
So I'm not sure why we thought at the time it was the best move to move her from director of curriculum to assistant
Some
principal.
personnel stuff.
Okay, I'm not sure. All right, so then, so that's my only point is I'd like the director of curriculum, but I'd like to see us look at the 3 supervisors and figure out a way to use those 3 admin positions rather than adding another whole admin position when we're talking about cutting teachers.
I'd be for adding a curriculum director or assistant superintendent. I also don't want to cut any of the faculty, so I want to make sure that that's reiterated. I think our staff is very important to the success of our school system and success of our students. But the curriculum director and supervisor, yes, it's an administrative role, so they're not on the ground floor with their students. However, they would take some of the workload that is on our superintendent that is not necessarily, is over under his purview, but he's literally doing the job of 2 people. Or more while building a new school and such. And aligning curriculum is a very detailed, very specific tasks that can take years and years and years of implementation and setting up expectations and follow up. There's also other aspects of that job when it comes to grants financial aid for applications for grants for our schools, for programs and services and such, that person will absorb the ownership of. We did have a conversation in regards to those curriculum supervisors, and I definitely agree, reevaluating what their responsibilities and aligning that is paramount. But having that curriculum supervisor can hold that accountability and structure more, as well as continue the alignment and strengthening the curriculum of our schools across the board. I mean, we had some brilliant presentations. I don't think we were board members yet when that presentations came, and they have a lot to bring to the table, but I definitely think that there needs to be someone who can focus on that specific umbrella, which being curriculum. It's not curriculum and running the school district and building a school and doing all those things. And I think if we have someone who's really honed in on that aspect, we can only continue to invest and improve our schools.
As far as our current curriculum supervisors, I think they're invaluable. And there's a lot of work that they're doing for the district that is different than just your overall curriculum director. I also heard from them during the workshop that they don't just do math, LA, science. They team up and take care of art and other unified arts areas and things like that. So I think that that's important to keep in perspective. I don't know if anybody looked at a job description for assistant superintendent of teaching and learning, but it's something that was provided to us in the past. It's 2 pages. Curriculum and instruction, evaluation, professional development, budget support and development, and communication. So a lot of these things on here is, like Dana said, grants and things like that. So these are things that are coming under the purview of our superintendent right now. And I know that he has delegated some of this to his staff, but in my opinion, this position is needed and we haven't had it in a few years. And I think we take the risk of, Dr. Willett, you're amazing. Something's gonna fall through the cracks, and if for some reason you need to be out or something, then I feel like we need this position to be able to run the district if you're not here for some reason. But I just think it's really important. If anybody wants a copy of this, feel free.
I would really only be in favor of this position this year if one of our current supervisors wanted to advance their careers and move up. I think, everybody thinks they're happy where they are, but maybe they're not, and maybe they do want to advance their careers, and maybe this could potentially save someone from leaving the district and going somewhere else. I don't know. I had suggested it to Walt, but I do think that if somebody has that on their career path, I think it's a perfect opportunity, and I would support the increase to their salary for the position there, but not an added position.
I agree with that. I agree with Christine when she says, adding an admin at this point when we're cutting teachers and we already really kind of have 3 admin people kind of working on curriculum. And I did talk, I don't know if I was with Karen at the time, but they did say that they do work together and cover some of the other subjects and so forth. So I think that there is a benefit to having an overall person who is kind of getting the whole district together and giving us direction and that type of a thing. But I think since we lost the curriculum director or they retired, we've had a couple of opportunities probably to hire that position, and we've gone the supervisor route instead, and the cost is not tremendously different. So I think that we've kind of been going down the path of making that as our choice, that was, what we wanted to do at this time, and I just would like to look at what we have and maybe evaluate before we jump in and add another position. I just wanna know that we have a goal, and if one of the current supervisors wants to move up, I would be all for that, so that's one.
I think that we are doing our district a disservice unless we add a director of curriculum. It was lost in the 2017-2018 budget. It was cut from the budget, just for a clarification piece. In terms of making sure that we have all of the needs of our district covered, not just based on like curriculum, but teaching, learning, professional development, assisting with grant compliance, assisting with maintenance of effort compliance, all of the, the legalese, the unfunded mandates that we complain about and, exist. Dr. Willett and the district really need this.
Thank you. Tony?
I think from, was it last week to this week, this is where I've made probably the largest change in opinion. And the most of that was due to a conversation with Dr. Willett on this. That I don't think there's any argument that he's taken on, a significant amount of activities that are above and beyond what you normally find. But that when we're looking at trying to put together a responsible budget where we're having reduction conversations, where we're trying to find efficiencies, even Dr. Willett admitted that this may not be the time to be looking at expenditures such as this. We've got these supervisors in place. Based on the presentation that they gave before, I think they're starting to do some wonderful things. I'm excited to see where they take that. I'm excited to ask some questions and learn from them. I think it makes sense to give them time, to look to Dr. Willett, to ask how we assist in lessening the balls that he has in the air without us, while we take a look and then make a future assessment.
I don't know if you wanna speak to the staff about taking one of the current admins and moving them up as the board members project.
I appreciate people putting thought into this, and it's always wonderful to have people thinking about it, trying to offset the burdens. What I respectfully suggest about that is that's basically just a title change. The amount of work that's there, the amount of balls in the air are still in the air. So you're just basically replacing 3 people with 3 people. That's not gonna make a difference with respect to the workload and how we handle it. These curriculum supervisors are absolutely crucial. I can't do it without them. I've been willing to go and work without the director or an assistant superintendent because I understand, I would have a hard time ethically as an individual educator losing 3 interventionists to have that one position, or losing certain things that I know are working directly with kids. But that's not to say that that job isn't crucial or important. The understanding I need is just, if you're gonna ask me to do things, understand that my responsibility is spread very thin, so I'm doing them in a timeline I can do them, which I think I'm responding to all of your needs and what you've asked for. But that would be what I would ask, is compassion with respect to being able to produce what you're asking to produce. From the standpoint of the position, I would not want personally to have that position at this moment in time, because I would not want to lose other staff to attain it. And I think as you do spend this year looking at what these individuals are doing, the curriculum supervisors are doing a massive amount of work, they're doing great jobs where they're at. And I would just caution that if there's a sense among the workforce in this particular group, that they might not have a position in town, they might start looking, and that would be the worst thing for me, because we have a lot of work that we've been doing together. They're excellent at it, and we've gone through years of having some fluctuations in this particular area. That just makes it exponentially harder when we have that situation going on. So just respectfully, I think this is a good structure. These individuals work extremely hard, and I'm very fortunate to have them, working in Tolland. And for me, it would certainly help me to have someone, and I'm not saying I don't need it, but I would not want to lose the 3 educators to achieve that at this moment in time. And if that's the choice, I don't want that to be what's happening.
No, you can say your thing.
Oh, no, I was just smiling at you because you're always so. Don't be scared of her, she's all right.
If I could ask a question about what Kate had said and Christine had said, at one point we had one and we lost it due to budget, right? But in theory, the way that if it was implemented in the perfect world, what would be the pyramid? It would be the director of curriculum and your 3 curriculum supervisors? Is that would be the?
It's keeping my answer brief, but answering that is not easy. Remember that assistant superintendents are different. They're an 09, they have a different kind of thing. So right now, if you hired a curriculum director, that person would be within the task bargaining unit, meaning they would provide some curriculum work offsets, things like that, but they would not be able to help me with supervision. I have a number of people that I evaluate. It would require an assistant superintendent outside of the bargaining unit that had an 09-3 like I do. You can hire people with 09-2s, but in this district, if you have an 09-2, you become part of the task bargaining unit, which means they can't evaluate each other. So I have 24 people I evaluate on top of a lot of other things, and that's just who I directly evaluate, not who I handle with respect to personnel. So that means, talking about positions, what would help me most would be assistant superintendent. What would help the curriculum direction would be curriculum director, but that's how that splits. That's why in the sheets that I gave you, assistant superintendent's a little more. It would be like a 158 start point versus the 130 something. So that's, that's more or less that.
No, that answered my question, thank you.
Okay.
No, I got it, thank you. Thank you. You did a good job.
So for that section, the most, I wanna say like the voting in terms of just writing down what people were saying. The special education teacher was definitely, an add in. I see your tab. You're tallying it too.
So I've got, instead of
Okay. Okay, so let's go to the programs. We can start off with the understanding by design.
I'm not in favor of putting that back in. I just think there are better places that we could use our resources. That's it.
I don't know if I know enough about it. Was this the program that we bought at the end of last year? We had some money left over. Did it cover this whole year for that program, or was it a multiple year program?
It covered basically this year's ramp up of the program. The supervisors they are excellent at what they do, but the UBD needed a little bit of the people from McTighe to come help us, and they're the well-known experts.
I remember the
in
McTighe.
UBD. So the individual from that organization came to assist, and that's what we paid for this year.
And this relates to the Portrait of a Graduate?
This all relates to that overall vision, mission, portrait of a graduate work that we're doing right now in preparation for the NEASNC visit and compliance with state graduation requirements, all that stuff. We're aligning ourselves well to be able to put you in a great position for the process of evaluation that we're doing.
But this isn't an actual then program for the kids. This is more administratively, I don't know if that's the right word, but.
So far as anything is, UBD is basically, it helps train staff in how to do the best practice of working backwards from your assessments. And so, again, keeping that answer brief is hard. But it is a well-established in the field of education methodology for doing this work. And so it's a standard that you want to be doing extremely well on, and if you're doing it highly effectively, it will have many benefits for your students. it's oftentimes best to have the experts from companies like McTie, organizations like McTie, introduce that in a district because they will help us do the best practice implementation versus our best shot at it with not having that expertise. Because you can get a book and try to just do it, but these individuals help you design with your staff the best practices, how to implement it.
So this is an individual, this program we're talking about, this $10,000?
Is the company, and they send an individual that works with us, and then, ideally, we would work with them for more than this 1 year that we've worked with them. Without it, we're going to be doing it on our own, which isn't, we can do a version of it on our own, but the longer we have exposure to the expert, it's like, if you're gonna build a rocket to go to the moon and you had exposure of 1 year with the scientists versus having exposure of 2 or 3 years with the scientists, you have a much better shot of getting to the moon sooner and more effectively if you've had more exposure to people that are experts in that particular domain. So it's just, if you ask about UVB across the educator world, it's a very well-known approach. And this district, we got the benefit of this year with McTie. We'd like to have the benefit of next year with it too, if possible.
I guess my thought though would be against it only because I hate to see the programs that directly affect the kids be cut to keep that. So if it's kind of a either or, I'd rather see the ones that benefit the kids directly.
And I can do a straw poll at the end if you wanna go through all the programs and just see, that would be maybe something beneficial for it, so.
Thank you.
I have a question about this. So this was something that we would have and it would slowly taper off with the coaching and that, where they would coach and then we would almost coach within.
Right. It's getting the exposure to the expert stuff, and so eventually we would not need it, but the supervisors himself would have and would like to have kept this going with this organization and this person if possible.
So this would be 10,000 this year, 10,000 next year if we kept.
Right now, this would be fiscal year 21, the 10,
Right.
you'd be putting the 10,000 back in. Yeah, no, don't be, that's what you're doing. If you wanted to put it back, you'd be putting it back in this fiscal year 21.
Then I would be for it, understand those.
I'm for keeping, or putting it back in, whatever you want to say it, understanding by design, because I feel that it does, actually affect our kids, but because it does have to do with our portrait of graduate work, and that has to do with students, so I would like to keep that.
This one, I had sent in a question and it said you had taken it out, and then I was trying to do more research on what it was. So at the end of last year, we invested in understanding by design. It was, because you called them McTie, I remember, and it was the $30,000 in the PD budget that I was wondering what it was. What did that cover, and what can we carry forward with what we spent already? Like, I guess I don't understand really, like, why we need more.
We focused most of the efforts on the high school staff. So we used we are using all of the available training opportunities that you had. It's 6 for the first 6 or 3,000, and there's a pricing structure for it. So we focused that energy with McTie on the high school staff for this particular year. And so we would like to be able to then take that and work with the other school staffs. Right now, because your portrait of a graduate is, as you head towards NES&C, the place NES&C evaluates is your high school. So starting UVB and having that introduced there was the first priority. But having it consistently applied across the entire district means that it's going to be even more highly effective. So that's why if we had only a certain amount of time with it, we would put that energy at the high school level. And if we were going to have an opportunity to do more of it, we would start working backwards from there. We'll try to spread that out over the kids.
I guess as of right now, I feel like since the high school's had it, maybe we could do train the trainers in some of the lower levels, so I wouldn't add it back right now. But open to discussion, always.
I was thinking along those same lines, if you've got some folks that are thinking on it, then we can just spread that amongst the rest of the staff as best we can. Given some of the other, requests here, or wants, I guess.
So based on what I know about understanding by design, it's actually a method of planning instruction. That's what it is. And it directly affects the quality of instruction in the classroom. It also supports mastery learning. It's like a pedagogical skeleton. So teachers start with the assessments and then learn how to plan backwards. Understanding that it's actually backwards design planning is what it's also called. If we've only done it at the high school, then I think that we need to have the actual folks come in and do it at the middle school and the elementary schools as well. Asking a high school teacher to go and train middle school or elementary, they're different, it's just a whole different mindset. But in terms of NEASC, New England Association of Schools and Colleges, and the Portrait of the Graduate, I think we need to keep it in so that we can continue to strengthen and support our instructional practices.
And one of the first meetings after we got sworn in, I think Kate, you brought me a brochure on the accreditation. And, I took that and read through it, of course, kept pulling on that sweater string, trying to understand what that seed was that we needed to be doing. In fact, I think I shot poor Dr. Willett a half dozen emails on what's our implementation strategy for doing this, where's our timeline for doing that. But one of the things that I read that really struck to my core, and, as we've talked throughout today's conversation, I've repeated the fact that this is not a single year discussion that we're having, and we really are looking forward to the accreditation, past the accreditation. And one of the tenets in this says regularly reviewing units and curriculum against design standards enhances curricular quality and effectiveness. So I firmly believe, just from what I understand here, that this, what is it, $10,000 that we're talking about, that if we can really get this ingrained and really be performing this, the investment here actually becomes an avoidance of cost later. So this is one that I would absolutely add it.
Can you just repeat that one
Whoa.
more time to make sure Lisa got that?
Follow my chair.
I do, from my personal standpoint, I would like to see that, at one point I saw 60,000 tied with it, so I don't know if that was the start of the program, but the 10,000 is a much nicer number. So, I would like to see, once again, I do like the idea that when you have people trained, our own staff trained, that we could, once again, bring that to the middle school, bring it to the elementary school. Therefore, if we need to do a year of that to implement and make it proper, then I would be for that. So.
Question. I think I'd be concerned with having staff teach other staff, although we do have specific PD structure. I guess my question would more so be how much would, one is there's different criteria, as Kate, our educator, mentioned, that there's different criteria when you're a high school accredited teacher, when you're in elementary, middle school. So they don't necessarily, anyways, you know where I'm saying with that. But nevertheless, my other concern would be time out of the classroom now. So now we're looking at other costs that we will incur with substitute teachers and different things of having that teacher outside of their classroom to do this teaching and training. So I'm just wondering what additional costs might incur if that was the road that we go for. And I know that there is some training that we do have our teachers do, and they go and they come back and train, but I know that's kind of already on our professional development plan. But if we were to look at adding this to our professional development plan, what does that look like, taking our teachers out of our classrooms to implement that training? Just thoughts.
Let's talk about rats.
So actually, I think you actually could speak more to this, but I'll just say that I believe that we should probably put it back.
Conversation today, you wanted a direction. I'm trying to get you there. Okay, so, yes,
It's not a program I'm an expert in, but from what I've heard from board members, particularly you, Ashley, about some of your son's experiences, which I would say that I'm not in favor of putting that in place.
Are we at Lexia, Newsella?
I only know of it from my 8th grader, and I don't see a huge benefit. From what I understand, they get they read an article, and they answer some questions about it. I don't know the specifics about it, but that would be something that I feel like we should be able to do just within our curriculum itself, and that we don't need a specific program, so I would not be in favor of it.
okay.
I'm in favor of the Newsella and the Lexile programs. They're phenomenal from what I've seen, with specifically the Birch students. I don't know how it impacts, I don't have necessarily the direct feedback from the older children, but I have seen it impact the younger minds greatly, and it teaches them automatic. I mean, it's automatic, and they're on it, and to some of them it's a video game, and they're learning. Some of them, like the Lexia, for instance, Rini, I see you.
I know, like,
What are you talking about? So,
Are they two different things? Can I just
I was gonna
ask a question that I'm
Newsella
not?
is a part of, isn't Lexia a part of, Lexile programs all a part of the Newsella?
Yeah, and Lexiles are part of Fontes and Pinella. You know, what Newsella gives you is that it's a quick access point that has Lexiles. So let's say we're all in 3rd grade. Each of us might have a different reading level. And so to choose an item for all of you that would match your reading levels would be difficult. Newsella is a tool that allows you to, for a large number of kids, quickly get something that is at their reading levels. And Lexiles are part of what's called a Fontes and Pinella spectrum of reading levels.
So is the Lex that what Dane is referring to, is that more for the younger grades then, and the Newsella is more the older kids, or they
both do
it
a
all?
similar thing, it's just that the Lexia is probably it's a little bit more of it's probably got less current news items, it's just another tool to do something.
Again, what I enjoy about it is that what I've seen in the classroom, they do, and I apologize if I'm explaining it the wrong way, but they do almost like a round robin where the kids are in different groups. So they'll be on their Lexile program or their Newsella program where the teachers are doing one-on-ones or one-on-threes with a couple other students while other students are in another station. But what I like about it is it has, like Dr. Willett said, is each child, each student goes at their own level and pace, and that communicates back to their educator. They can do it at home, on their iPads at home as well. It could be a great tool that way, and it communicates it back to the educator. So parents don't allow your other students to do the other students' stuff, but it is a great way, another tool for that teacher to guide that individual student.
Dr. Willett, is this part of our instructional round conversation.
Yeah, actually, you're gonna see a lot of these in action. A lot of these kinds of things. And to your point about differentiation, that's exactly what it's about. You can have a much, you have a large group of kids, you can have these groups doing different things at different levels much more effectively. What all of these tools really come down to is teacher time. How effectively within that span of time they can address that group of kids. And the more of these tools they have, the more effectively they can do it. The more they have to go out and try to find materials that are at these levels, the less amount of time they have for the direct instruction. So that's how the tools help. You never really want to cut these unless you have to, but I don't want to lose the teacher that teaches it in lieu of the program itself, because at least the teacher who teaches it can go out and find something. Lexia can't go find something. You know what I mean? So that's, if you're looking at losing staff, you're better off keeping staff and losing this kind of program. But if you can keep the program, it helps the staff do their jobs more effectively.
So at this time, I'm in favor of keeping it, because it is a tool and important resource for our educators. And I'm looking forward to seeing it in action tomorrow.
At this point, I'm not in favor of keeping it, but I guess I could potentially change my mind tomorrow after seeing it.
I think I'm still a little confused as to whether, is this a 1-year subscription to a program that we're talking about?
Yeah.
So this is
like
an
a
annual,
database.
this would be like an annual thing. And is Newsella and Lexia all the same thing, just at different grade levels? So the Lexia goes away if we don't get this Newsella? Because it's only listed as one thing here, so I'm
Yeah.
trying to follow the balancing
Right,
ball.
the Newsella is the one that's on here, and Lexia hasn't come up as much, so what you're talking about right now is Newsella.
Just the Newsella. So the Lexia thing is currently not on the discussion table.
It hasn't
It's
come up.
just, so with that in mind and my limited knowledge, I don't know.
So, can I just ask who uses, like what grades use Newsella right now?
My impression is that it's most used in K-5.
Okay.
So,
I thought Newsella was the middle school.
That's what I'm saying.
I think they use it, I think they use it some of the time, but it makes sense that they use it in middle school too, because it's more sophisticated.
Yeah,
It's Fontes and Pinnell though, so if you're using those levels, they range the gamut. Let's see if I can see.
I'm only saying that because my 8th grader uses it.
So, yeah,
Well,
so
anywhere you use Fonte, anywhere you're using the F&P reading levels, you can use Newsella.
the 12,000 is is that for like the whole district, so any teacher in the district could use it?
Yeah, that was let me check to make sure, but that was the cost of doing what we're doing now.
Okay. So, what I know about Newsella and what I know about reading, all kids are at,
It's
for the whole
middle
district?
school and high school, it's mostly where it's
I
used.
actually kind of know what I was talking about.
It's mostly middle school and high school.
Okay.
It is
middle school and high school, okay, so, at my school, we have Newsella, and my teachers use it regularly. In any given class, like, I'm just thinking of like a 7th grade history class, you're gonna have 24 kids sitting in there, and you're gonna have a variety of reading levels. Because they take the NEWA, you know what reading level they're at, and that's their Lexile, right? So, you would then be able to say, okay, we're gonna study, we're gonna study ancient China. And I know that these friends over here at this Lexile, these are kind of around here, these are kind of around here. What Newsella does is says, okay, you want an article about ancient China, I'm gonna give it to you, and I'm gonna give it to you at these 4 different reading levels, so that those kids can access the information about ancient China without compromising, without their reading level getting in the way of their comprehension. So it's a really amazingly useful tool for all levels of readers. So I am 100% behind keeping it.
I'm not for keeping.
Anything else like that? I personally like it. Like I said, my son rather have the NEWA get the boot than the program, so.
We can't.
don't think that's gonna.
No, but he tried. Go ahead.
I just had a question for Katie. Your school uses this a lot, so if you had the choice between Raz Kids and Zella, if you had the choice, I know you want both, but if you had the choice.
I mean, it's, to me, it's not a choice, like, because Raz is for beginning readers, and Newsella is for your more intermediate and advanced readers. So I don't think it's apples and oranges.
It is.
I'm sorry, you're right, thank you.
Apples and apples.
Sorry, it's, not for it.
Hold back, I'm missing somewhere.
4 and 4.
Oh, Rini, you didn't have one, yeah, that's right.
Well,
okay.
I'm.
So you can think about it, you
Yeah,
can
I'm
think
thinking
about
about
it.
it. So I'm leaning towards a little bit more now, because I do like the idea of supporting education for all the levels within a grade and not scrambling around and, whatever, but.
You can still think about it,
I'm
because
thinking about it, but I'm.
that right now
hopeful to
is
have that
a split, so, no pressure on you, but decided factor. Freshman sports.
Wait, Ashley, can I ask one quick question? Do we know who's using it in the high school? I've never
Yeah,
heard
I
of it
guess
in the
that
high
would be a
school,
question,
and I'm just curious,
How
like,
much usage are we getting?
could we split it between the middle school and the high school, kind of like we were talking about with Raz? Is it more beneficial at the middle school? I've never heard of it at the
Yeah,
high school,
I mean,
but
I
that
think-
doesn't mean it's not being used.
I would say this actually goes back to, how many interventions you have too. Like the high school doesn't have as many, or at all. So, you'd have more opportunity probably to use it for more staff that were able to focus on reading level and lexicons. Having said that, I think it's a tool that's great for the entire spectrum, because that, it can be used in so many different ways. It's just another tool across that whole level that helps the teacher be more effective without having to find the materials themselves. And they'll tell you they don't have enough time as it is. So
Are they using it? I think that would be.
all I can do is, have I seen anyone use that directly? Because that's not my.
No, I understand.
But having said that, as I was going back through the records, it's listed as a resource for the high school and the middle school, which tells me that people are using it at the high school.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what the usage rate is as well from Barbara.
That would be definitely
No way.
And I don't know, like, in terms of like pricing structure, if Newsella would be willing to even say, oh yeah, we'll give you just middle school rates, I don't know.
Less licenses or whatever that is.
something to consider. Tony, you had your hand up?
Well, I was just gonna say, if we're between sections, that would be a good time to move to extend the meeting past.
We have
10
freshman sports and literacy how, and also just
Public
public
participation.
participation.
So why don't I just go ahead and say, I move that we extend this meeting past 10 o'clock.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Everyone is for it. Lisa's aye. Motion passes. Freshman sports, Jacob.
So I agree with a lot of the points that were made, the opening statements about the importance of freshman sports. I think in particular, like you said, girls volleyball, because there are no other options in town for freshmen. I would definitely support bringing that one back. For the other two sports, I'd certainly consider it if we can find some sort of cost savings elsewhere.
I don't like this cut, but that being said, talking about Newsella, talking about Rec and Rick's, talking about Raz, understanding by design, I mean, those are all more for our kids' education. So as much as I don't like the sports being potentially cut, I can understand it, but as I said earlier, the volleyball would be the one that if we can save it, just because there's no other option.
This one hurts me, because it's talking about what helps all children, right? So you have those athletic folks, maybe they wanna go into like physical therapy or sports medicine, and they're athletes. So, as Kate had mentioned, I'd never heard of pay to play. until Tolland, so I'm kind of taken aback. Yes, this could be a good chunk of savings, but I would hate for our kids who are not, who thrive on sports and get, again, that could be like an arts thing to get these kids' wheels turning, so I'd be in favor of keeping the freshman.
I won't repeat myself from earlier, so keep it.
Like Dana, I feel like this is a tough one for me because I feel like you have to give kids things to do as well. But given the discussion on Nucella, I've changed my vote on Nucella with the elimination of freshman sports.
I think it's been really actually helpful to talk about some of these programs for me, because I didn't know what they were, some of these grads, mechanics and I can't even still say it. So I still, lean towards for sure if we can keep the girls volleyball. I would love to keep all of it. I'd love to keep everything on the list. Let me just be clear. If I could, that would be great. But I think we're in a place where we're making smart choices, so I'd like to keep girls volleyball, and if I'm kind of with Jacob, if we can find something else that we can offset for the other two, that'd be good.
I'm very much so on the fence for this one. When I spoke to the athletic director and I said, so talk to me, like, is this gonna hurt the program? Is this gonna hurt kids? He didn't seem to be overly concerned about it, but then thinking about Karen's number, because those are individual friends, that starts me to say, well, maybe this is worth saving. So I really don't have a decision on this. I'm gonna kind of abstainish here. I'd like to save the girls volleyball because there's nothing else like that anywhere around. So I'm kind of abstaining.
Okay, Tony?
Growing up with what we'll say limited, if any, athletic ability, some of those freshman sports, that was my only chance to put on the uniforms and go out there and play. So I recognize what that could potentially mean for these children. But in the same conversation where we're having to decide between literacy programs and teacher positions and those things, I have difficulty saying, yes, we should add back in a freshman team and not those. And so while I still believe that the reductions of those are right, I can't advocate to put these back in for that reason.
I do feel that majority of people would say save the volleyball. And if there's cost savings, I think we would have a good amount of people that would support the boys basketball and the boys baseball. That's what I'm saying. Literacy how? Jacob.
So again, I'd just like to point out that included in this budget is literacy health for dyslexia, which I think is very good. And well, I think it would be nice to include that to the general population. I think that we can wait a little bit on that. I know that the literacy health program for dyslexia is kind of, it's not a permanent thing once it's done. I think that we can then invest up in the general population and kind of phase it in that way. So I would like to see that done. I also know that we already do provide some training for the general population students and sending them down to conferences or whatever. So I think that, in difficult budget times, it's something that we can definitely push off for a couple of years.
I agree with Jacob on this. My understanding is Literacy How is not currently in the regular ed program, and my understanding is, Dr. Willett, maybe you can just confirm this. My understanding is we've got programs called Wit and Wisdom and Journeys for TIS that are relatively new. So I guess I would wanna see us use these programs that I'm assuming we've paid for at some point. So I'd like to see if those programs would work, and then the following year, if Literacy How is something that we feel would complement the programs that we've already have in place right now, then I would definitely like to see that brought into the budget at some point, because it sounds like it's a great program for special ed. But right now for this year, I don't support adding a new program into the budget.
I'm for Literacy How on the special ed, continuing on the special ed, and then growing to the general education students. And I'm not an educator, but I do know that dyslexia is not just a special ed problem. I'm sure Kate, as our educator, or Walt, as our educator here at the table, can speak a little bit more intelligently on that. So I don't want to focus on the fact that dyslexia is a special ed problem. Dyslexia is
Can be any student.
any student. So we've seen some results in some of our programs that we've had, and how Literacy How has impacted our folks on the special ed situation, even going from 35 to 13.
That's with like the.
But more intervention and such. But this is base level, where we can minimize that need to go up to that special ed or those intervention pieces. It's crucial to understand what our students need and have. And I think it's misrepresenting that we say dyslexia is just special education. So I'm for Literacy How on what we currently have and implementing for general education.
Dr. Willett, what's the range here, the 60 to 144, is that what this is?
It's just the number of people we can reach, the extent of the implementation. With 144, we can do as many people as we did, as extensively as we did this year. But 60 would at least give us a chance to get a foothold with the general ed population for real ed. Literacy How, wit and wisdom, what happens if we were to just ask randomly what Literacy How is of the staff, for instance, there are many staff members who would not know it. So they would equate it to something like wit and wisdom, or they would give it some general equivalency. The Literacy How helps focus on, as you have been noticing, things like helping kids identify kids earlier with dyslexia or this kind of tendency. If you don't identify the children earlier, they become students of special education and potentially become students that will be outplaced. But having that ability, having that kind of training helps us catch that population. These programs aren't just shotgun programs just thrown out there. Foundations is one of the ones associated with working with phonics, for instance, but it's more like one of the four tires in a car. You really have to have all the tires so the car can move. This is the same kind of situation. You don't want to be without your tires. You can have 3 tires and not have the 4th one, and you're not going anywhere fast. But if you have the complement of programs, then you're going to get where you need to go. And these individuals have put a lot of attention into identifying the programs we needed in the various places that they need to be. So the expansion of that program into the general ed population, ELA structures, is a very logical expansion of it that would help us continue the excellent work of making sure that we're serving all students well. I posted that dyslexia information, Ms. Bennett shared a lot of it too. That's to give people a sense of how much that has come on the radar in the last 3 or 4 years, and how much emphasis the state has been putting on that particular thing in the last 3 or 4 years, which means that if you fail to put an emphasis on that in your district, you're doing it at your own peril. Not you directly, but a district would be doing it at its own peril.
Just looking at numbers here, I'm just gonna throw out everything on the bottom, staff and programming, and using the 60,000 for Literacy How brings us to 276,698. and that's with no curriculum director. So in my opinion, that would be fine and keep us at the just under the 1.8, wherever we were. 1.87. So, we can keep trying to find 5,000 here, 5,000 there. I think that, we should be having a bigger conversation about, this list is the best at providing for our students, and so I would propose that.
So this is another tough one for me because in my research, I think it's a phenomenal program. I love that it's focused on, it started in special ed and now we're bringing it over to the general ed kids. I just want to clarify one thing. We already have 144 in our budget for special ed, right? We're not talking about adding that back. That's already in there, correct? Okay. So what does the 60,000 cover?
It's an expansion of the same level of training to your ELA staff, district-wide.
Okay, all right. And just lost my train of thought. Because I really want to advocate for it. I know I pushed you on this at our one-on-one meeting the other day, and I feel like if we just came down on course reimbursement by 20,000 to trend, even postage 5,000 and 35,000 on FICA. I really think we could put it in there. But that's me. I love the program. I feel like maybe I'm not in the majority on that, but I feel like I'm trying to get it.
Well, I've been advocating for it somewhat also, because I know it's really important to get the kids the foundations to be able to read before they exit second grade. Because after that, it's, read to learn, and if you can't, then we're all about interventionists and we're all about, special help and all the rest. And that, if in fact your goal is cost containment, that's where you don't want to be going. And it's not great for the kid, or children, friends. I'm struggling with it a little bit. I mean, I wouldn't advocate for going to the 144,000 level. I also wonder if we can't phase it in, if we have next year with, which we already have in the budget to have the next year with the special educators. We have been sending teachers to Literacy House for some training and, do some things, and then, the following year, then move it into the special ed or to the regular ed population, and maybe that's the way we can step it in. I don't know, I am a bit back and forth on it, because I do think the sooner we get to the kids and start working with them, the better that is for everyone, for the district, for the students, for everything.
Yeah.
That's entertaining, thank you. So I just looked up Journeys and Wit and Wisdom, and that's curriculum. Those are curriculum programs. I didn't know what they were off the top. And Literacy House is more like a immersive training, so that we can make sure that we detect and then remediate any reading aberrations that may kind of bubble up to the surface, which is in line with Connecticut General Statute 15-97, I think. 97?
It's all right, whatever.
Anyway, it's 97. I did have a question. Okay. The Literacy House, the 144 that's currently in the budget, that's for special educators and interventionists, is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's currently working. My child is evidence. So my thought is that we go on the low end, the 60,000. I'm comfortable with that because I think it's good for kids and I think it's in compliance with the law, which I like to know. That's all I was saying.
Yeah, I think we've got two sides of this coin when we're having this conversation. I mean, dyslexia, and specifically when you start talking about early level reading and the cumulative effects that happen if they don't get it, or they do. When we start looking at cost avoidance down the line and putting our kids in a better position, it makes absolute sense to put our efforts there. But on the same note, I believe that we've got a list of things, or Dr. Willett, his staff have a list of things that sit outside of this budget that are waiting for efficiencies, waiting to meet that watermark. And while I don't believe that, let me change that. Well, I think the foothold that we've already put in place with and continuing with the 144,000 is a great start and gets us going. I don't think it makes sense to budget the expansion, but instead to say, if we find these efficiencies, or if we find ourselves in a position where additional savings start to exist, that this should be on the top of that list.
I will say from people that I've spoken to in the school district, that the training is absolutely phenomenal. That they actually come in, they will model a class, they will help you, people are fantastic, hands down. So I would like to see this in the general population, and like you said, the 60,000 is more comfortable than that 144, but the 144 is already included into the budget. It's adding the 60 in. I'm really on the fence about that. I really love the program, and I'd love to see that into the general population. And you had said at one point we need another year. Right. So once we say we go 60,000, would that then cover the teachers we have in order to implement it and continue the program?
It would cover our ELA staff, yeah. I mean, it would put us, again, it's putting the 2 steps forward.
In that sense, then I would definitely I would like to see that then happen, I think. It's still hard to say because I want to be able to find more savings, and I don't want to keep increasing because there's a lot of things that I definitely crossed on here. So the next conversation we'd have was for reductions. If there's, we essentially went through everything, but was there anything else that you wanted to add before we go to public participation? Jacob.
Yeah, I think Christina just brought it up briefly, but again, in character with the letter that we received, reducing things to trend where we can find it, I think course reimbursement is something where I'd like to see that decreased to maybe 30,000. That'd still be an increase from the previous year, but a drop from like 50,000 that we have now. And hopefully that would allow us to maybe put some more money up into these other programs.
That's, remember that line is degree change, and it's 2 separate things. It's 22, or it's not all course reimbursement. It's lane changes, degree changes, and courses.
I haven't really honestly had the time to go through your FICA explanation, so I'm still a little confused on that. That's just something I think I need to look at, and I still am hopeful, based on my calculations, that there's still a little bit in there, but I don't have anything else at the moment.
I think we talked a lot about cost savings, cutting, removing. And we did a great conversation about how programs impact our children and impact the children of town and the students of town. But again, I'm gonna go back to the statement that I said in the beginning. We need to consider how we can positively impact the overall education of our children by reinstating positions, programs, and instituting new programs that will continue to drive a strong education for the Tolland public school system. When I'm looking at my sheet, we talk about not cutting staff and not cutting programs. And I know that Walt wrote his 1.87, which I wasn't a fan of. to be blunt, no offense, Dr. Willett, I didn't mean to say Walt, Dr. Willett.
I call it a lot worse.
Sorry. I didn't mean it's late, I apologize for being disrespectful. But we found, you worked with that consultant and you set that appointment and you did some digging with that consultant advised you, and you, through that meeting, there was a tremendous savings. We have, by my tally, and my tally could be wrong, we've cut a 5th grade teacher, a unified arts teacher, a curriculum director is up in the air, and if we don't have the curriculum director, maybe it's making one of the curriculum supervisors a curriculum director. That's cutting staff, people. That's cutting faculty. That's cutting the folks that are molding our children's minds, our neighbors' children's, our friends, as Kate say, the folks that are our future Olympian, our future basketball star, our future president, our future doctor, our future lawyer, our future artist. What? Air Force, NASA, anything. This is our biggest investment, and we are all, the majority of the group, and there's some things that we all agree on and some things that we don't. And I'm gonna repeat, a 5th grade teacher, arts teacher, a curriculum director, and or our curriculum supervisors. That's upsetting, that's disheartening, that's daunting for our staff that are supposed to be educating our children. It's daunting as a person. I take my role very seriously as a Board of Ed member, because as someone that I spoke with as of recently said it so eloquently, that their reason for wanting to be on the Board of Education is just to be able to speak for and advocate for those folks that don't necessarily have the time, like your friend with the 4 children, Christina, or the folks that have no idea what's going on behind these doors because they don't have the opportunity or the time to know, or they trust in us that it's going to be okay, because it's going to be okay. But we need to make it okay. And these things that we've limited out of our budget that aren't in the 1.87 that I think should be reinstituted is not okay. These are the folks that are going to be molding the future, our future. Whether they're your kids, your friends' kids, your neighbors' kids, whether you're a parent or you're not a parent, they're molding our future. And we just voted on minimizing staff. We're gonna mold those children, and I'm repeating myself because I'm dumbfounded. But I will say, there's wonderful programs that we had phenomenal conversation that also helps our staff guide and mold these children. And yes, did Dana vote for a lot of these items? Absolutely. Because this is our chance for our children. I know my parents used to always say, Dana, I want you to have a better education than I had. I want you to have a better job opportunity than I had. And you better believe that I want that for my children, and I want that for everybody's child. And I hope that our neighbor's child wants it for the next generation. What we do today and tomorrow and this week and next month, and what we present to town council, or what Dr. Willett presents for us to decide, is going to change the direction of the Tolland public school system. It's going to change the direction for our folks and our kids and our friends, as Kate says. I just want to let that resonate and then sit and absorb, because I'm not comfortable with some of the results of our conversation tonight. I'm not comfortable for our town. I don't feel the success. And Dr. Willett's gonna open that door in the fall, and it's gonna work out because we can make it work. But I think we can do better. Thank you.
I was hoping for a bigger conversation about plan for the future, but I'll just repeat. Thank you, Dr. Willett, for all the work you've done with this and answering questions, and took up your weekends and more than that, so thank you to your family. We can keep all this. Literacy How at 60,000. 1.87 is a responsible budget. this is an education budget, is a spending plan, a plan for the future. So I feel that this is still responsible and we keep our valuable staff and the programs for kids that are necessary and the resources for our teachers. 1.87 is a responsible budget for the town of Tolland, for their education system, which is our biggest asset in town. We are advocating for every family. We are advocating for the families that can't afford tutors, that can't afford boot camps and what have you. So I think that that's important that we talk about that. This is a spending plan, and being cognizant of the last few years of budgets, and in particular 16-17, which were not choices. I think that this keeps us somewhat in a forward direction. Not the best, in my opinion, but I think it's a responsible budget.
So I'm gathering from some of the emails we've gotten, some of the feelings, the emotions around this table. I guess I'm just in a different place in the sense that I feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude for what we have here. I mean, even coming after a really bad year and Dr. Willett putting forth, you know, very low budgets of 0.78, and I think last year was under 1. And with those budgets, we hired a lot of people. We hired 2 admins, we hired interventionists, a business teacher, a science teacher, social workers, I mean, I'm not gonna list them all, but we've added a lot of things that have made Tolland a phenomenal system. And I can't wait for my son to go there next year. You know, I don't have all the numbers offhand, and I did receive an email about some of the cuts, but I'm just trying to be in a glass half full type of mentality with what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. So at the end of the day, with the budget, I think what Dr. Willett put forward was very responsible. We found some efficiencies, we can do some great things, and maybe come together as a board and agree on some things to add. I know we're not all gonna agree on what to take away, you know, but I would love to see us all come together on, you know, at least a couple things in the boardroom on the 12th. I don't know if we've given Dr. Willett a clear direction. I know you were tallying votes, but I think do you feel like you have a clear direction?
Well, no, I think we gotta plan this.
So
We have to get to a place where you're telling me what to keep on. I have a spreadsheet ready to go to add, take away, but we need to walk away from, sorry to take the. We wanna end it with you telling me what you want in this budget, so, because I have 3 work days to get that done. Before you know, and I don't wanna make.
So how do we, and I'm sorry to cut this conversation short, but how do we accomplish that? Like a straw poll on everything, or did you already?
You might wanna go, I think I was gonna plan
Okay, oh yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have essentially what we were going through, but we can go through again and do the strong poll in case anybody has moved on decisions. It should probably be the tally that you have as well. We should be matching on what we have, but continue.
I don't really know where I was going. I'm in a place of gratitude. I feel like we're lucky with some of the things we can add back in. We can benefit the community by giving the town council a reasonable budget and hopefully avoiding a fight there. And I'm looking forward to moving the process forward.
Ditto. So I want to thank Dr. Willett for finding efficiencies in the amount of $279,324. This is major, and it gives me hope that the quality of education will continue to be very strong. I feel like we started this conversation as of what should we add back, and I feel like that was a faulty assumption. This is so late in the process to be having this real conversation about what kids need. I wish we had been having this conversation a month ago, but that's kind of a moot point at this part. I wish that we had not been picking apart costs, but instead thinking about what it looks like in the classroom for our friends and our kids. We have heard from our constituents, and they are behind improving the quality of education for all of our Tolland students. And so I would just say, let's use that $279,324 to put it all back in all of these quote unquote cuts. Listen to our constituents, they want a curriculum director. Oh, where's my list? They wanted the 5 things that I listed before. Curriculum director, they wanted the art teacher, they wanted the special ed manager, case manager, they want the freshman sports, and they want us to not cut any programs. So, I don't want any more corrections. That's it.
You know, I'll be the first to admit and to accept that education is not free, and excellent education even less so. You know, I think similar to Dan's story, you know, I moved my family here and my kids into this district in 2017 during those times that Karen talks about, during those times where, from what I'm hearing, the strength of Dr. Willett's staff is one of the things that kept those doors open and kept the impact low. And was still floored by the absolute amazing things this district had. In my heart comes the education that my kids came from to what they came to is indescribable. You know, we can't forget that regardless of the struggles that we've had the past couple of years from a financial perspective, the package that Dr. Willett, his staff, and his town are putting on the table is nothing short of wonderful. Now, I believe that we can, and it is our responsibility to continue to, I think somebody used the word nitpick, to dig into the details, to have those conversations, to say, how can we get more efficient? Oh, you know what, here we really can't, but here we can. I think we have to talk that to remain honest, to be able to turn back to not only ourselves, but the rest of the town and say, this is the budget that we need to have and we need to pay for. But we've got to look and we've got to reduce it.
Do you wanna get your spreadsheet out and then we'll go through so you can,
Yeah, I'm ready with it. I'm just.
perfect. Okay, let's do the straw poll for the 5th grade teacher, those for it. We have 3, and those opposed. So that one,
That just doesn't go on.
okay. A unified arts teacher,
Just so you know what I'm doing, just to preface it, I'm building up from the increase right now, which is completely taken out, this money, you know, this.
The 279?
If you take the 279 out, you're at a 467, 394 increase. So what I would be doing is whatever you vote for, I would add into the spreadsheet to add back onto that number. You know what I'm saying? You're building up from that point of base, so whatever you're adding on top of that increase. That increase is a 1.17 at 46793. So if you add the teacher back, for instance, it's 52, I add that to the spreadsheet, I can tell you how much of a percent you're getting now with that, just so you know.
So I'm sorry, so you, Dr. Willett, you went from 746, 718 down to what?
So it went from 746, roughly 1819 to 467, 394.
It's on the sheet.
Right, and then what you're doing is if you're adding something.
Sorry, I'm ready on here.
That would be what, you'd be down to the, without anything, it's 1.17 there, so you're building up on that with what you add back. No. Understand? Yeah. Okay. I know it's 10 o'clock, which is.
Yeah.
I have lifesavers if you want.
unified arts teacher, all those for? All those opposed? So that one you're not having. Special education teacher, all those for? All those opposed? We're adding that one back in.
I just gotta say this, and I just wanna say it real quick. This feels wrong to do this before we hear from the public. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I thought we were voting on the 12th. I didn't know what this was all
Well,
about
this was
tonight,
his,
so.
So what I do have to, you're doing a straw poll right now because I have to build your budget between now and the 12th, so you have something to vote on. So you're essentially deciding as a group what you're gonna keep in or out for me to build your budget booklet and then ultimately vote on that budget booklet.
But the 12th is the ultimate vote.
You would, in order for us to have it for the town manager the next day, basically, you'd have to have this resolved by the 12th. So you're giving me my marching orders tonight essentially.
Okay, understanding by design, those four,
We skipped the curriculum.
curriculum, do you wanna do that one first? The curriculum director,
This is for
4. 3. Those opposed? Okay, and the assistant superintendent? Those 4?
Well,
I figured we were talking about the same.
Sorry, we're all
Yeah.
talking about the same thing.
What was that?
The curriculum director, no, it was 3, 4, and then everyone else.
3, 4, and 4. Okay, just wanted
Understanding by design, those 4. 4. And those against. So we have 4 and 5, so 5 for it. Raz, now this one, I wanna make it 2-part. Those for it for only Birch Grove.
What?
Raz kids only for Birch Grove,
So it'd be like
Are we
half.
gonna
half
have,
of
what
it.
are we gonna have as another option?
for the whole,
for only Birch.
and then also
Okay.
those opposed of it completely.
My options before I vote.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's fine.
Yep.
So for Birch Grove only. So there's 5. For all of Birch Grove and TIS, we have 3. And those opposed to it completely, it's Tony. Rick and Rex.
So just to clarify, you're doing this for Birch Grove, that's what you decided to do.
For, yes, there's more votes for Birch Grove than there is for. So back to the Rick and Rex, I don't know how we would like to have that, because it seemed as though the earlier poll, people were for it if it would be scaled back, and it has to be less than half, because the half wasn't the mark.
So you basically would just essentially, do you wanna do 3?
Yeah.
Do you wanna vote on 3?
Okay, so straw poll for 3,000 for Rick and Rex. Those for it? Those opposed? So, for 3,000. New Swella. Those for it?
Sorry, I'm changing my vote.
I was for it too.
Thank you.
And those opposed? So 2 only opposed, so
I'm actually in the middle, I still kinda wanna know if there's in it before I really vote, but I know you guys have enough, so I'm just gonna abstain from that vote,
okay.
cause I don't know.
So it looks like you have enough.
You do.
Freshman sports, no, I definitely heard a lot for volleyball, so let's do that one first, those.
So, I'm sorry, I just wanna be clear on the choices, if you don't mind.
Yeah, there will be volleyball, cause I feel like that was mentioned versus the basketball and baseball, but we can do each one. Yeah. So volleyball, those for it? So we have 6 for it. Those against volleyball? 2. Let's do boys baseball, those for it?
We're doing them all separate?
Yes. So it's a
Can
volleyball.
we vote just for all of them too?
Yeah, we can do that too.
Okay. That's my vote.
So the baseball. Anyone opposed? Baseball? And then,
Good thing your husband's not here. Actually, he was the one who said volleyball was more important than baseball.
Now it's on the liver.
He'll back it.
Basketball. Against? And then who would like the whole, all three sports?
Oh.
We have two. Literacy how? I'm assuming we just do.
So just, are we assuming that if you have 2 for, that the rest are against, or do you wanna ask if we're against?
Oh,
So
anyone
maybe-
else, well, if no one had all.
So if only 2 are for, are you assuming that the rest of you aren't abstaining, you're against? If you're not for, you're against, is that what you're saying? I just wanna make sure I'm getting it. Okay.
Three?
No, I'm for girls volleyball and I'm abstaining on boys basketball and baseball.
What about the all three?
All three can stay.
Anyone else for the all three? Literacy how?
So just to confirm, and I'm sorry, just making sure I got it, so girls volleyball's in, the rest of them are not, the other 2 are not. That's where we're at, right? Okay, just making sure I got it.
Literacy how? Are we just doing the 60,000 since the 144 is already in?
So do you wanna, yeah, you can do it for this 144, then do it for the 60, you can see how many supported each level.
Okay, cause the 144 is already actually in there.
Yeah, but it would be.
Your other option is
There's
another
a
140.
couple levels of
Yeah.
additional implementation from what I understand. The
Correct.
60,000 is one level and then there's probably a couple of different other ones, all the way up to 144. So, and what I heard from the conversation before is that we're looking at the 60,000. People seem to be more comfortable with that. Is that
That's what I
accurate?
thought, that's
Okay.
what I wanted to make sure what I'm.
I think so. But maybe other people want them.
Yeah, so let's start with the 144, those in favor of the 144. Anyone opposed to the 144?
I abstain from that.
Yeah, I don't,
Well, cause if you
I'm
have,
gonna vote for 60.
so for 60, and that's gonna be my next question,
Yeah.
so 60,000.
Okay.
So 60, who is for 60,000? Those opposed 60,000. So I hope that, and obviously tomorrow we are going to the schools as well, so I think that would.
So right now, you're at a 615,166 increase of 1.54%. 1.54 at 615,166. You have in there the special educators, girls volleyball, the UBD, BGP RAS, Blue Kenricks, Newsela, and literacy.
No curriculum supervisor or no assistant.
Correct.
The total, I'm sorry, the total one more time, please, Rob.
The increase is 615,166 for a 1.54% increase. How would you have you build in your budget also?
Any other comments before I open up to the public comments? Bill?
Sure. Good evening. Dr. Willett.
Name and address.
Yeah, will do. Esteemed honorable board members. My name is Mary Rose DeBerry.
You have to say your name and address
She just
first.
did. Yeah.
She just did.
Mary Rose DeBerry, 37 Ryan Road. Wow, this has been an eye-opening experience. I am the mother of a 6th grader who won't be going to freshman sports for a couple of years. But he plays baseball, basketball, football, golf, and soccer. Now, I do understand pay for play. We get it. We're paying for it now. So even if there's no baseball program and we decide to save it Little League, we're paying for it. So give us an opportunity as the families that want to continue with the sports program to be a solution. By cutting it completely, you're not allowing us to be that solution. And it breaks my heart.
And I'm here now because the kids that are entering freshman year next year. My husband always says, when you lose something, you're never getting it back. Never. Right now, we have well-meaning parents that coach every sport in this community. I honestly want my child to play for a coach that's not his buddy's dad or mom. They need structure and someone that they're not that familiar with. Freshman sports, to me, there's a big difference between freshmen, their size, their skill, and JV and varsity. We're also taking away now a spot, perhaps, from that JV person that, or like you said, the person that may not go any further but plays that sport. It's an accomplishment. My son did not make 6th grade basketball or middle school basketball. And you know what? As much as his heart was broken, he was excited for his buddy who did. His 6th grade buddy who did, the one who sits on the bench, but is a great kid. But it knocked out another kid that I know of who didn't get to play this year, who was in 8th grade. Those decisions make a difference. Builds their skills, it keeps their team competitive. And you know what? I want my child to lose interest.
Sorry, man, that was 2 minutes.
Let me finish, please. I sat here patiently, sir.
Yeah, we do try to limit it to 2 minutes for everyone.
I get it. I just wanted to continue one last thing then, is that my son would rather throw a ball with his buddies than play video games, and I want to keep that going. I'm also the vice president of the middle school PTO. We run many fundraisers, and we need more support from this board, and we need more support from the administration in school. We ran a fundraiser that raised very little money, and it's disheartening because the teachers come to us looking for refunds and reimbursements, and we want to be able to give them to them. So they're not coming to you for these little tiny things. A few things I'd be more than happy to write a check for that they've asked for in this budget, but we need more support. And then finally, there's one third thing that I'd like to ask.
Can you come up after done for 2 minutes? I'm really trying to keep everyone to 2 minutes.
She's got one more thing.
There's one last thing. It's a $50,000 Department of Justice grant that I see that this town, the Tolland Public Schools received. And I just would like to know if that's in your budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Harrell, 256 Mount Spring Road. I know this is a hard job, been there. Being a member of the BOE does not make you an expert in education, and you do not know what's best for the students of Tolland. Some of your comments and recommendations this evening are nothing less than shocking to me. $10,000 is 0.00025 of your budget. You are allowed to ask for more. It doesn't have to be one thing over another. The community should feel great pride in contributing to the education of the children of Tolland. Educating children is an investment in our community that should be supported, not viewed as a burden. Nitpicking the pennies without a view of the whole while trying to achieve an unreasonably low increase is not supporting students or the quality of education we provide to them. Our students and our BOE staff deserve better than the negative impacts of the financial issues facing Tolland. When we continue to reduce opportunities to students while the town's reserve fund is increasing, and also when a tax stabilization fund is created with education cost share money, does not support quality education. This is not investing in a quality education that our Tolland students deserve and that our community needs to make families want to live here. This is what the 102 and counting people who signed the letter have asked you to acknowledge and improve upon, and I don't feel like you've heard any of us.
Thank you.
Next.
Is this good morning yet? My name is Carl Russell, and I reside at 8 Hillcrest Drive in Tolland, and I've been here since 2007. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? How about you? You all seen this? Have you, ma'am? How about you? No? This says that our students are worth it. That's why I'm here. I just have a few words. It's almost morning time. I'm formerly from Ellington, where I raised my family. I live here in Tolland as a proud grandparent of 4 children who have gone through the Tolland public system. I'm very proud of each and one of them. I'm proud of the system for nurturing them and educating them. I stand here today to thank the superintendent, to thank the principals and the teachers, the staff, and all for their education towards excellence, their belief and love for young people, and their selfless giving. I appear before you personally on my own accord as a parent, a grandparent, and a professional educator. A professional educator of many children. Of my 4 children in town, one is at Tolland High School yet, a junior. One has been awarded by the Navy a scholarship for extending his education beyond college. One has been accepted to dental school. I'm proud of each and every one of my grandchildren in this endeavors in Tolland. And I want to thank the Tolland educational system, the superintendent, the teachers, the principals, and all of them for their dedication in standing with my youngsters. I thank them all.
The 2-minute mark has gone on a while.
I'm not finished, I'm sorry. I'll finish
Well,
in
I
a
just want to
second.
give opportunities to everybody.
As an educator, I'm last, I think, so I'm gonna speak. And parent of children with special needs, and I heard some things tonight. I must also focus on those youngsters in the Tolland school system with special needs that have each the opportunity to reach their fullest potential. All children in our educational system, from the very academically talented down to the very child with special needs, all children. I'm almost finished. Give me another 30 seconds. As I see your role as an educator, I want to advocate to say, for you, as I see your role, to be an advocate for each and every person in our school system, such that it benefits each and every student. And I'd like to just restate for a second, it's the Board of Education stuff from September 25th meeting, the 2019. And it's a vision stated by last year's board. Listen to it. It's very good.
We're really gonna have to let someone.
I'm gonna state it. Sorry. To represent education at its best, preparing each student for an ever-changing society and becoming a full community of learning where excellence is achieved through each individual's success. That was a wonderful statement made by the last board. Do you hear it? Do you have the same vision? You were on that board. Do you have the same vision?
I do, and I think.
Oh, okay. Well, you have that same vision. That's great. Let's go from there.
Excuse.
I'm going to end now.
Thank you.
I'm going to let. No, I'm not finished.
Oh, no, you're.
I'm going to. 2 words. 2 words.
It's an.
2 words.
Institution.
Sir,
Actually, 2
please
words.
sit down.
Please.
Advocacy for the students, for the principal, for the superintendent, and for the parents. Advocacy, and secondly, and I mean this forcefully, listening.
I really have.
Listen.
This is who I'm advocating for.
Listen.
Please sit down.
Listen. Okay? Listen to the parents.
Please sit
Listen
down.
to the parents.
He has a voice too, and I'm in.
You've gone way over 2 minutes. I'm trying to
Thank
be
you.
polite.
You've been very
Please sit
patient.
down.
I thank you.
Just
This is very important. What I've heard tonight I appreciate this person who has spoken from her heart.
Can we get?
Huh? I appreciate,
Alright.
Kate over here saying what the people have said. You have not listened,
Is
some
there
of you.
someone else that would like to speak?
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Katie Murray, 8 Lisa Lane. I hope that when you publish your budget next week, that the first page, that the first paragraph explains to every single child in our school system why they're not worth it. Why are our children not worth a level services budget from this year? Tucker's 7 years old. He's a great kid. He comes home every day excited about what he learned in school. And you are asking me, as his mother, to send him to school next year where he will have fewer services than he had this year. Why is that okay? And I ask you to answer that question for me as a parent, for my kid, in the first page, in the first paragraph of the budget that you will be voting on next week. Why is Tucker not worth it?
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Lisa Burns, 214 Slater. I would like to remind people in the audience that the Board of Ed is here to obviously help build a budget that the state is giving us. So maybe the anger should be more towards the state, and Ned Lamont, and those people than some of the people who are sitting here volunteering their time. That's all.
Lisa?
Tammy Duccio, 71 Weber Road, I promise I'll finish. I just wanna thank you guys for Dr. Willett for answering a multitude of questions. I do have a question, I know you've been slammed with questions here, but if you happen to have an idea if you're gonna get to any of the public questions and when those will go up. But mostly for all the hard work that you guys are putting in to review this and to look at it and make an actual educated, informed decision on what is there. I thank you guys for doing that.
Tammy?
Liz Costa, 54 Josiah Lane. Education pays. Education does not cost. It's not a burden. I heard tonight several times, first of all, I think you're all gonna benefit from going to the schools tomorrow, wherever you're going. I heard tonight that a person in a curriculum supervisor position could just move into an 092. It proves to me you don't know what you're talking about. It proves to me that you don't know what you're talking about. I wrote a letter, listen to the educator. Listen to the educator. Please listen to them. The art teacher has a complete trickle-down effect. One art teacher impacts an industrial arts teacher that's going to have to come over from industrial arts and combine 2 computer classrooms. That person's also assignment is also to teach keyboarding. That's going to a business teacher. That business teacher is going to have to cut 1 section of business law. It's a complete trickle down. All you were focused on was art. There's no graphics 3. There's only a graphics 1, 2 sections, and a graphics 2, 1 section. You're losing that. If you go look at the classroom tomorrow, go look how much equipment's in there that won't be able to be utilized by anybody. It's really important you go look at the equipment. There's not gonna be any CAD 3, because there's no CAD 3, there's only a CAD 2, and that will be cut. The photography, I actually agree, we should be teaching the old school photography and digital photography. I heard a lot of times tonight, oh yeah, but like my children like it, but we're gonna vote against it. I think it's a good idea, but I'm gonna vote against it. I heard also a lot about supporting special ed. Very, very important to support our special ed. But there's a whole multitude of other kids in the school system we need to support. Giving them an opportunity to do art or freshman sports. I would question the freshman sports only because Title IX deems that we need to offer the same amount of sports. I don't know what you thought about it. I haven't looked at how many sports we have on each one.
And the 2 minutes.
I will take my time, Tony, thank you very much.
The 2 minutes are still up.
Okay. We need to have staff there for the kids, actually on special ed. Not sure if anyone understands what all the cuts you made tonight mean. And all I would say is I would have expected you all to ask for more, not less.
Thank you, Liz. Anyone else?
Jesus, microphone?
You don't need one.
Well, I just want to
You
make sure
broke
that-
it.
I was gonna say, when are you gonna sing for us, Andy? Are you gonna take it off?
Don't start the clock yet. My name's Andy Powell, 21 Clearbrook Drive, and I want my comments to reflect only that I'm a private citizen. In my time in being in Tolland, we've been here for more than 20 years, we've seen a continuous decline in regards to the services that have been available to the students. We've been fortunate that both my sons have, one's graduated to UConn, one's graduated over to UMass, and part of the reason they got there was because of the dedication of the staff, the teachers, and also the boards of education. In deference to the town council, you were not elected to be overly concerned about the cost of education. You are to be a guardian of education, you are to be a custodian of education. And the idea that you're gonna spend 15 minutes talking about 1/10,000th of a budget is great to take a look at, but you've gone too deep in the woods, too deep in the weeds. We have to look at the bigger picture. It's okay for the Board of Education to ask for more. It is the town council's job to then put that forward to the town to make that decision. We talk about cuts and they become personal. People get very, very emotional about these things. I understand. But the reality is, it's okay for the Board of Education to be a leader and a guardian for education in this town and to ask for more, to dream big, to do the additional work and not look at 1/10,000th of a budget. And I will tell you that if you folks put forward a budget that actually causes a teacher to pay out of their own pocket for services or for supplies, I will actively campaign against you in the next election. No teacher should have to pay for a supply. That is a job. That's like telling a bricklayer to go off and buy his own bricks. Thank you for the 2 minutes. Thank you for your time and your dedication to Tolland education.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll say something, can I get my 2 minutes back? You're welcome. Lisa, for everything you're ready and calling me to call the room, thank you all for your hard work, it's a hard, it's very difficult, like Andy says, people are very emotional. I'm not gonna say anything, but Lisa, just copy what Andy said. And I am glad, I'll say, that you put the special ed teacher back into the budget. So please, you have another chance to revisit everything and don't vote for higher budget. You don't have to decrease it. Your job is to increase it.
Anyone else?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed?